Plunging from a skyscraper, his tragic life ended. But meeting the mysterious Florishan sparked his miraculous rebirth. Reborn as Attila, in an empire ruled by supreme mages, he lacked even a single drop of mana. Now, a lost barbarian, trapped in a deadly forest. He faced monstrous beasts 5 times larger than bears. With no other choice, he took action. Gripping a rusty axe, he fought for his life. 10 grueling days later, his hardened body became an absolute fortress. No beast could pierce his flesh. Suddenly, a system alert flared. The legendary protagonist, Charles Einhard, had finally appeared. Without hesitation, our fearless hero challenged this supreme being to a brutal deathmatch. To Charles, this was sheer suicidal recklessness. Yet our warrior smirked, calling it unyielding courage. Overflowing with confidence, he swore to crush the protagonist and conquer the sovereign's path. A dazzling system window materialized, crowning Charles Einhard as the NTC, strongest warrior in history. As our challenger tightened his grip, a shocking notification exposed his true identity. He was the original creator reborn as a lowly extra roaring. They charged, their blades clashing with explosive fury. The catastrophic impact shattered the earth itself. Moving like lightning, our hero leaped skyward, unleashing a devastating strike. But the protagonist's impenetrable blade effortlessly parried the blow. Rebounding back, he landed at a safe distance. With chilling calmness, Charles smirked, having already memorized the technique. Raising his massive greatsword, the protagonist prepared his deadly counterattack. A monstrous wave of aura slashed violently through the very air. The crushing impact sent our hero flying backward. Without a second of mercy, Charles lunged, bringing down his blade for a fatal strike. The overwhelming violence smashed him into the cracked earth, yet defying fate, he twisted his battered body and charged back into the fray. His desperate blade finally struck the protagonist's chest. Unfazed, Charles coldly declared the battle was over. He mercilessly unleashed the executioner's strike. The brutal attack pierced our hero's chest, launching his broken body high into the air. Suddenly, a colossal pillar of divine energy plummeted from the heavens. The apocalyptic collision triggered a cataclysmic explosion, awakening a legendary power. Within the blinding crater, our bloodied hero stood tall. But how did this begin? Flashback. A sinister-suited man urged Mr. Sato Shoda to sign a life-changing contract. Sato, a brilliant novelist, had achieved miraculous success with his epic 400-chapter masterpiece. He was the proud creator of the heroic Saga of the Sovereign. One signature and his glorious universe would become a blockbuster game, the ultimate reward for his years of agonizing effort. Trembling with excitement, he brought his pen to the fateful document, blindly convinced he envisioned a golden future. But his glorious dreams shattered when he was suddenly thrown off the roof. A mocking voice echoed, mocking his sheer confusion as he dangled helplessly, standing casually at the terrifying edge. The treacherous office manager told him to take it like a man. He chillingly claimed this brutal betrayal was actually for Sato's greater destiny. Panicking, Sato screamed for mercy, dangling over the terrifying abyss. The traitor simply sighed, calling it a pathetic final display. Sato froze, wondering if he had screamed his inner thoughts aloud. Suddenly, the traitor's face warped monstrously. He smirked, having effortlessly read his mind. The terrified author finally realized this smiling executive wasn't human at all. With ruthless cruelty, the creature stomped viciously on Sato's desperate bleeding fingers. A horrifying scream tore through the sky as his bones cracked. Drowning in despair, he questioned his miserable fate. Defiantly, he roared his burning desire to survive, glaring fiercely at the monster. Looking down from the heavens, his survival instinct ignited. Instantly, an overwhelming aura erupted from his fragile mortal shell. The devastating force shattered reality itself. A blinding explosion of times of conflict. Chaotic energy swallowed the cityscape, free-falling through the wreckage. He questioned this terrifying phenomenon. Witnessing the modern city in burning ruins, he wondered if his own rage caused this apocalypse. Floating missingly, the creature questioned if Sato had awakened. The legendary berserker class and the absolute authority of savagery. Reaching out a demonic hand, the creature suspended Sato in mid-air, marveling at this unfathomable latent power. With a twisted grin, he decreed that this raw strength would grant Sato an epic second life. As the monster's human guise shattered, he cursed the author to reincarnate inside his very own fictional masterpiece. Releasing his grip, he promised a future reunion. Sato plummeted mercilessly toward a boiling apocalyptic volcano. He smashed into the alien Earth with a bone-shattering impact. Gazing at the mystical environment, he questioned if this nightmare was truly happening. Ding! A glowing system window cheerfully welcomed him to the heroic saga of the Sovereign. His mind reeled. He was trapped inside his own creation. Suddenly, ominous rustling echoed from the shadows of the dark, cursed forest. Paralyzed by mortal terror, Sato sprinted wildly from a colossal monster bear. The beast raised its claws ready to rip him apart. Refusing to die as pathetic monster bait, his eyes locked onto a rusty axe abandoned on the bloody earth. Snatching up the weapon, he charges straight at the monstrous beast. The bear roars, ready to tear him apart. But his strike crushes down right on the monster's skull. The massive creature slams into the dirt, instantly obliterated. Gazing down at the fallen beast, pure shock hits him. What the hell is going on here? Glancing down at his own trembling hands, he gasps, just what is this insane body? The last thing he remembered was a mysterious shadow shoving him off a skyscraper. Next thing he knew, he was hurled straight into the fantasy world of his very own novel. Even crazier, his mortal shell had evolved into an absolute superhuman vessel. Right then, his eyes lock onto his bulging, battle-hardened biceps. He feels the iron density of his broad chest and the perfectly carved blocks of his abdomen. Whose absolute unit of a body is this? He whispers. Yet physical might wasn't the only miraculous change. His primal senses were razor sharp. Taking a deep breath, he catches a terrifying scent riding the wind. He instantly recognizes the foul stench of those murderous beasts. But this time, a cold chill crawls up his spine. There's a whole pack. Given the deadly odds, falling back seems like the smartest move. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream shatters the forest's silence. Racing toward the sound, he bursts through the trees, only to find a massacre of mangled bodies painting the grass red. A lone warrior woman stands amidst the carnage, realizing all her comrades have fallen. 4 giant demonic bears circle their prey. Within seconds, the bloodthirsty monsters lock their glowing eyes onto her. Crack! A fragile twig snaps beneath her trembling boots. The massive alpha bear violently snaps its jaws toward her hiding spot, and she freezes in sheer terror. With a deafening roar, the titangent-sized beast charges. The woman clenches her twin axes, bracing for the brutal impact. Tears blur her vision as the shadow of death looms over her. "I refuse to die like this," she cries. In that split second, our protagonist blasts onto the scene. A single earth-shattering punch obliterates the monster's jaw. Blown away by his own devastating power, he stares at his smoking fist. "Hey, you holding up all right?" he asks. The woman, eyes wide with disbelief, stammers. Attila, is that you?" Utterly baffled, he glances down at the trembling warrior. "Attila," he echoes the unfamiliar name. She gasps. "The tribe elders swore that you perished." Suddenly, panic warps her face. "Watch your back." The 3 remaining blood-crazed beasts are lunging for his throat. As he casually pivots to face the massacre, he smirks at the odds. "Just 3 left," he mutters. She screams, "Run, you can't take them all." With a confident smirk carving his face, he chuckles. "Oh, can't I?" The demonic monsters roar, shaking the heavens. A wild thrill surges through his veins, daring him to unleash this new legendary power. He drops into a combat stance. Boom! He launches himself like a cannonball, his fist colliding with the first. "Brute. That's one," he echoes. Without skipping a beat, he rockets toward the next prey. A devastating roundhouse kick shatters the second beast's ribs, and that makes 2. The massive predators crash into the dirt, utterly defeated. Without mercy, he loads up a final earth-shaking strike for the last savage monster. The 3rd beast is blasted straight through a boulder. 3, he calls out. Grounding his stance like an unmovable mountain, he swings a fallen heavy axe. Swish! A terrifyingly precise silver arc flashes. The beast's massive paw flies into the air. The battered woman watches, completely paralyzed by his godlike display. Finishing his bloody dance, he wipes out the remaining threats. Finally, the dust settles as he stands, victorious over the mountain of corpses. Turning around, he demands, "All right, who exactly is this Attila?" Before he can blink, the warrior girl violently sprints toward Binally, him wrapping him in a desperate embrace. Tears stream down her cheeks as she cries, "I knew you would survive." The sudden affection completely short-circuits his brain. Burying her face in his chest, she sobs, "The whole village will rejoice. We must hurry back." But right at that exact moment, a glowing blue system window bursts into his vision. It reads, "Character Profile Attila, age 16. Like a tidal wave, the real Attila's memories violently crash into his consciousness. Fragments of a forgotten childhood flash before his eyes. The visions violently fast forward, right to the agonizing moments right before his brutal death. Gasping for air, he absorbs the shocking truth. Peering into the lost memories, he realizes poor Attila didn't just die during the coming-of-age bear hunt. He was murdered in a sinister conspiracy. The sneering face of the vile traitor flashes with crystal clarity in his mind. The harsh reality hits him like a truck. He had reincarnated into the body of a low-tier barbarian extra. Damn it, why couldn't I be the overpowered main character, he curses inwardly. The warrior girl asks if he's hurt, but he quickly brushes it off, promising he's perfectly fine. Glancing down, his eyes catch the brutal gashes tearing up her leg. Dropping to one knee, he offers his broad back, declaring they need to reach the village immediately. She stammers that their home is 20 kilometers away, but he scoffs at the distance. Not a problem. There's zero chance I'm leaving you. Out here, he declares. Hoisting her up like a feather, his massive legs explode with insane speed, tearing a path straight toward the sanctuary, high above a vibrant emerald canyon. The newly born Attila fearlessly swan dives off a towering cliff. Mid-air, defying the laws of gravity, he casually snatches a wild fruit from a hanging branch. Taking a massive bite, he laughs. Damn, that hits the spot. He playfully offers his companion a bite, though she stubbornly shakes her head. Soon, they finally touch down in the legendary valley of the fierce Black Wolf tribe. The guarding sentries drop their weapons in absolute shock, fully convinced the fallen boy was just monster food by now. Swarmed by his roaring kin, he scans the sprawling village with glowing eyes, whispering that it's absolutely breathtaking. Every single detail flawlessly mirrors the grand world he had penned with his own hands. The sprawling, rugged paradise laid out before him is the genuine living, breathing territory of the legendary Black Wolf tribe. Standing tall before his roaring people, he smiles. This twisted fate was the ultimate reward for a creator author could dream of. The crowd parts for a towering figure calling Attila's name. Before him stands his father, the absolute legend who crushed an army of 5,000 men alone. Munuk, the mighty chief of the Black Wolf tribe, pierces him with a heavy gaze. He demands if his son has words for the clan. Standing firmly, Attila roars his triumphant return. Instantly, the fierce leader crushes him in a massive embrace, tears overflowing. Munuk welcomes his flesh and blood. Attila stands utterly stunned by the raw emotion. Trembling, Munuk declares his son has come, back from death's grip, fulfilling the ancient prophecy. He roars to the heavens that the Black Wolf legend is real, proudly, roaring with absolute joy. The chieftain immediately commands a grand feast to honor this miracle, promising endless mountains of meat and ale until they burst. As night falls, the roaring bonfire calls the tribe together, feasting and raising their cups to the fluss. Great martial god King Attila devours the glorious meal, swearing he could eat for an eternity. Suddenly a shadow approaches and offers a massive mug of ale, which he downs without a second thought. Behind them, fierce warriors begin their wild dance, to the pounding of heavy drums. This sacred ritual tells the legendary tale of the martial god king, showing how the mythical hero was slaughtered by cowards, only to conquer death itself. A maiden wields a battle axe, moving with breathtaking grace. She spins, cutting the air with deadly precision. The tempo explodes into a chaotic whirlwind of blades. A brief moment later, the epic performance concludes. And so the legend of the ultimate savior lives on. The entire village erupts in manic cheers. Watching the wild festivities, Attila realizes that if this truly is the novel he wrote, he only has one ticket back to reality. The sole gateway lies within the fairy kingdom, a realm ruled by supreme spellcasters, for that is where he originally hid the portal. Attila tears into a massive bite of roasted beast. Just then a rival steps out of the shadows, mocking the rumor of him slaying 4 giant bears. Bleeda, veteran Black Wolf warrior, claps with fake praise for the monster-slaying feat. He smirks, noting Attila has officially entered the ranks of the elite. In their bloodthirsty clan, this is the highest crown of glory, and a strict stepping stone to the chieftain's throne. Thus Bleed offers a venomous toast. In that single cup, a silent, deadly power struggle erupts. Attila freezes the mug mid-air, his sharp senses catching a foul scent. Smirking, Bleed mockingly asks why his cup remains full. Eyes turning cold, Attila cuts the chatter boldly, declaring they should just draw their blades. Bleed laughs, noting it has been a long time, sneering that the weakling finally grew a spine. He hisses a dark warning, not to get arrogant, doubting his supposed monstrous strength. Bleed then sneers that the bloody banquet has only just started and the dark night must be savored. Attila commands him to halt, but the arrogant warrior spits a cold farewell and strides off with his deadly crew. Meanwhile, a fresh hunt roasts by the blazing fire. A young boy runs to Chief Munuk, proudly claiming the fresh kill. The mighty leader beams with pride, predicting the kid will forge a legend of his own. He is worlds apart from his toxic brother Bleed. Having grown up without a father's warmth, Attila awkwardly freezes, unsure how to handle this tender family moment. In another life, he imagines casually bragging to his dad and soaking up that same glowing praise. Suddenly, Munuk's booming voice calls him forward. The chief reveals a sacred gift. With rough hands, he presents the holy mark of the elite vanguard. bestowed strictly upon absolute monsters who crush 3 or more giant bears at once. Munuk laughs, asking if the boy is stunned, boasting that true warriors bleed for this very honor. He aggressively pushes his son to tie on the legendary emblem. Attila fumbles with the heavy sash, his modern mind completely blank on tribal knots. He stands there, frozen the fabric, tangling into a messy knot. Munuk questions the delay, and Attila quickly lies about a battle wound, preventing him from securing it correctly. Chuckling, the colossal chief steps in to fix it. Pulling the fabric tight, he softly murmurs that this nostalgic moment brings back memories of their very first encounter. The emblem now rests perfectly upon his hips. Munuk rises tall, praising how Attila has forged himself into a true beast through endless blood and sweat. The young hero quietly bows his head. Gently, the giant strokes his hair, playfully ruffling the locks. He demands a proud smile, but the flustered Attila admits the fatherly affection feels incredibly awkward. Munuk roars. That hesitation is foolish, as claiming the elite title at 16 is an absolute myth. The surrounding wild clansmen fiercely chant for him to bask in the glory. A genuine smile breaks across Attila's face. Munuk thrusts his heavy mug skyward, roaring a toast to the unstoppable bloodline of the Black Wolf. A thunderous war cry erupts as every warrior raises their ale. The reincarnated author drinks deep, finally thinking this savage fantasy life might be worth living. But suddenly, a warrior's cup violently shatters on the dirt, followed by a blood-curdling scream. Panic erupts as Attila desperately shrieks for his father. In a single breath, the invincible chief is exposed, his body grotesquely, twisting in agony. Attila suspects lethal poison, yet Munuk's drink carries zero trace of toxic scent. The Attila rams the poisoned. The young warrior desperately shakes his father, crying out his name. But his only answer, a monstrous, blood-chilling roar. Munuk continues to count, thrash, entirely consumed by madness. The system analysis flashes red. He is trapped in an uncontrollable berserk fury. The tribe's great chief violently turns on his own people. The horrific truth strikes Attila like lightning. Bladera's true target wasn't just Munuk. The innocent villagers scatter their desperate screams, piercing the air. The villains wanted to slaughter every soul who worshipped the chief. Attila seethes with rage. Forcing his father to butcher his own people is an unforgivable sin. The maddened Munuk lunges forward. Like a beast, Attila stands his ground, screaming for his father to awaken. But as he blocks the path, a devastating, aura-infused punch smashes into him. Crashing to the dirt, the bitter reality sinks in. Words are entirely useless. His father is gone. Yet, Attila staggers up, muttering, "This cannot be real." Munuk erupts in a beastly howl as his dark awakening finishes. He unleashes a cataclysmic strike. The crushing blow shatters the earth, blasting Attila backward through the violently shaking air. Wiping his blood, Attila realizes he simply lacks the power to stop this monster. Amidst the echoing roars, absolute chaos reigns. A terrified boy sprints to his fallen mother, who collapses in the dirt. He shakes her trembling body, sobbing for her to rise. The desperate woman orders her son to run, but Munuk stalks toward the helpless pair. She shrieks, begging her child to flee for his life. Instead, the brave boy snatches a heavy axe from the earth. Spinning around, he vows to protect his mother. The corrupted chief raises his fist to crush the child. But in that split second, Attila materializes like a shield, taking the bone-crushing blow directly on his arm. He smiles at the boy's immense courage, and the tearful kid calls him Big Brother. Attila roars for the warriors to evacuate them immediately. The tribesmen swiftly carry the surviving family away from the slaughter. Attila pivots, barely catching another of Munuk's mountain-shattering punches. As their auras clash, the bitter truth hits him merely. Playing defense is a fool's errand. The berserker chief charges his aura again. He lunges forward with blinding, breakneck speed, sharply grazing Attila's cheek. The fierce blow slices his ear. Munuk immediately unleashes another merciless assault. A catastrophic punch crashes squarely into the young warrior's ribs. Coughing up blood, Attila realizes hesitation means death. With eyes blazing, he locks tightly onto his father's massive arm, knowing only one violent path remains. The young hero steels his resolve, finally ready to counterattack. Father and son lock deadly gazes, bracing. For the ultimate clash, Munuk stampedes forward, but Attila counters instantly. A meteoric fist smashes directly into the beast's face. In a brutal exchange, Attila drives a devastating uppercut straight into the chief's jaw. The vicious hook violently snaps Munuk's head backward. And yet, Attila relentlessly presses the advantage, unleashing a blinding flurry of strikes. The heavy blows detonate against Munuk's chest, but do absolutely zero damage. He realizes basic combat arts will never conquer this monster. Munuk's aura flares for another execution. In a heartbeat, they clash in a terrifyingly swift storm of deadly fists. Attila is savagely hurled into the crushed earth. The trembling tribe watches this brutal deathmatch completely, paralyzed by fear. Coughing dirt, the young hero forces his shattered body upward. Gasping for air, he remembers the ancient oath, a true black wolf warrior sacrifices everything to shield the innocent, and that honorable path of total selflessness was exactly the legacy Munuk had proudly sworn to uphold. Attila knows his real father would gladly lay down his own life to defend his beloved village. Burning with this undeniable truth, he rises, igniting his supreme, heroic strength skill. Golden aura erupts as he charges Munuk head-on. A meteor-like headbutt slams directly into the chief's iron chest. The bone-shattering shockwave violently knocks a tooth clean from Munuk's jaw. The tribe chief's massive frame is blasted backward by the overwhelming explosive force. The cursed tooth pierces the solid bedrock, completely drained of energy. Attila staggers blindly. He collapses into the dust, his vision blurring. Is this the tragic end? Yet the towering Munuk remains standing, as the sinister dark aura finally shatters. Bleeding on the earth, Attila watches in awe. The bewildered Munuk stares at, his blood-stained hands deeply confused by the carnage. Barely conscious, Attila holds his breath, praying. His father has truly conquered the mind control. A glowing blue system window chimes. Munuk's berserker rage is broken. Relief washes over the young warrior. His father has finally returned from the abyss. Suddenly, his sharp eyes lock onto a cursed object embedded in the dirt. It was the wicked control needle that had been secretly planted in his flesh. Munuk rushes to his battered son, voice trembling with regret. Smiling weakly, Attila whispers, "He will survive." But suddenly, the enraged chief's eyes snap toward the forest. Meanwhile, the treacherous Bloodera and his shadow assassins are cowardly fleeing on horseback. The black magic, Fury Needle, crafted by the Dark Witch, was designed to be absolutely unbreakable. Yet it was violently shattered by 23. The mysterious divine power awakening within Attila. Bloodera violently whips his steed, desperate to escape. Vanishing into the shadows, he sneers, telling the boy to savor his fleeting victory, for tomorrow brings total annihilation. The cowardly squad gallops relentlessly under the moonlight, heading toward the forbidden northern cavern. Reaching the ominous entrance, Bloodera barks at his lackeys to march inside. Plunging into the pitch-black abyss, they ignite a flickering torch. Instantly, an apocalyptic roar shakes the cavern, walls freezing their blood. An ancient godlike voice demands they return what was stolen. Emerging from the shadows, a colossal, heavily chained monstrosity shrieks for its missing cub. This is the legendary divine beast of the Black Wolf tribe, the apocalyptic forest calamity, unleashing absolute fury. Bloodera steps forward, mocking the chained god's legendary title. The supreme beast snarls, warning them to be, silences them, spitting the word cowards. One mercenary dangles a tiny trembling cub, threatening to mercilessly slaughter it. The mother beast pleads for mercy. Blade sneers, ordering the massive creature to completely annihilate the Black Wolf tribe, the mighty forest. Calamity lets out a soul-crushing roar. Meanwhile, Attila jolts awake, clutching his pounding head as his heavily battered body is completely wrapped in bandages. He wonders if he blacked out. Beside him, Chief Munuk weakly turns and greets his son, startling the young warrior. Attila frantically asks if his father is okay. Munuk sighs, admitting his paralyzed body refuses to move, but begs him not to worry. Staring at the ceiling, the chief confesses he heard everything and feels overwhelming guilt. Attila fires back. That Blade is the only bastard at fault. Still, a devastated Munuk insists he utterly failed to protect their people. He then declares he has lost all right to lead the tribe. Attila furiously objects, warning him that stepping down is exactly what Blade wants. Yet the broken father begs for understanding, stating the tragedy they faced was far too severe. Suddenly, chaotic shouts erupt outside. A massive crowd of villagers burst through the doors. Someone yells to stop shoving, reminding them the chief needs rest. Another angry voice demands to know who started this stampede. They hilariously bicker over which absolute fool brought alcohol for a wounded man. The mother Attila steps forward with her son, smiling warmly, declaring that his bravery kept everyone alive. She proudly reminds them of the countless bloody battles where the chief protected them. Everyone knows his fierce devotion to the village, and their absolute trust remains unbreakable. Tears spilling from her eyes, she begs him to lean on his people, for they will always follow their chief. Overwhelmed, Munuk hides his weeping face. The tribesmen thrust their axes fists into the air roaring, a vow to defend the Black Wolf tribe as one. Choking on his tears, the chief simply whispers a heartfelt thank you. Just then, a panicked scout crashes into the room, gasping for breath. He screams for absolute silence before delivering horrific news. The forest calamity has breached their walls. Outside, infernal flames are already consuming the village. Standing tall amidst the raging fire, the beast unleashes a terrifying roar. The forest calamity was actually the legendary divine beast that once fought alongside the great martial king to protect their ancestors. This sacred bond is exactly why the Black Wolf villagers always spoke its title with absolute awe. The breathless scout begs for their immediate attention, fearfully announcing the catastrophic beast invasion. Shock jolts through Munuk. The wounded chief forces himself upright, refusing to believe the devastating words he just heard. Burning with resolve, Attila volunteers to face the monster, but his father grabs his arm. Munuk warns him, it's pure suicide, a mere mortal cannot defy a godlike entity. Unfazed, the young hero grips a heavy battle axe, respectfully declaring he's borrowing it. Hefting the cold steel, he swears he'll return alive. With a fearless grin, he tells them to sit tight. Outside, the beast's heaven-shaking roar shatters the air. A terrified warrior points upward as Attila locks eyes with his monstrous foe. Witnessing its terrifying scale, he comments on its mountain-like presence. Suddenly, Blade and his henchmen step from the shadows, mocking the hero for arriving late. He asks if Attila actually expected a fair fight. Fury igniting his aura, Attila screams Blade's name, smirking with absolute arrogance. The villain scoffs that Attila shares his father's pathetic naivety. Twirling his heavy axe, our main character dares him to cross blades instead of just running his mouth. Blade claps slowly, praising courage fit for the great martial king's reincarnation. However, he wickedly reveals that he won't be dirtying his own hands today. Raising one finger, he issues a lethal command. The Titan's massive paw shatters the earth. Attila barely intercepts the devastating shockwave with his axe. Like an obedient shadow, the terrifying calamity looms behind Blade. Utterly bewildered, Hero demands to know how a godlike entity became a lapdog. Blade chuckles darkly, explaining that making Legend's bow is pathetically simple. You simply steal their world. He violently hoists the whimpering cub into the air. The majestic guardian of the forest was tragically reduced to a slave because the very thing it loved became a fatal chain. Gripping his weapon tighter, Attila glares and asks if he's quite finished writing his own obituary. Blade venomously laughs, flipping the threat back at the naive boy. Without hesitation, he points forward, commanding the beast to rip him apart. Attila instantly drops into a defensive martial stance. The furry juggernaut lunges and unleashes a meteor-like swipe. The hero desperately parries with his axe handle. But the bone-rattling impact reveals a chilling truth. The situation is practically a death sentence. One clean hit from those legendary claws would obliterate him completely. The behemoth charges for round 2, and Attila is sent rocketing backward like a rag doll. With insane agility, he forces himself upright boots, carving deep trenches into the dirt. The stunned warrior analyzes the impossible speed of that mountain-sized body, armored in skin that completely mocks ordinary steel. As the Titan circles closer, his tactical mind races. A spark of genius ignites. If a blade cannot slice solid rock, you can still ruthlessly drive pure force directly into its core. When cutting fails, absolute penetration is the only answer. Unleashing his fighting aura, he hoists one axe and locks his stance. With a roar, he violently hammers the second weapon into the back of the first. The devastating shockwave buries the steel deep into its flesh. The divine beast howls in shock, recoiling from the heavy shoulder strike. Without hesitation, Attila prepares to attack. Again, the monstrous beast locks its predatory gaze on him. He smashes a devastating strike into its massive paw, spinning his body to gather explosive momentum. Launching high into the sky, he brings his heavy axe crashing down right onto its shoulder with terrifying force. The brutal blade bites deep into thick, monstrous hide. A terrified grunt realizes his insane tactic, hammering one axe with the other. Under a relentless barrage, the giant behemoth finally crashes to the earth. The forest's legendary calamity weakly drags itself toward its fallen, helpless cub. Bleed scoffs, spitting that it is nothing but a useless beast. He ruthlessly commands his archers to fire. The mercenaries draw their tightly strung bows. A deadly storm of arrows rains down upon Attila, but our hero simply readies his stance. Blindingly fast, his axes weave an absolute steel wall, shattering every arrow. A panicked mercenary screams he is a monster. Instantly beheaded, the Doomed, man triggers pure terror. Attila explodes forward like a predator, butchering Bleed's cowardly forces without an ounce of mercy. Soon, enough. His blood-soaked blade claims the final life. With just his axes, he has completely annihilated the entire mercenary squad. He slowly turns his murderous aura onto Bleed, demanding a brutal one-on-one deathmatch. Smirking arrogantly, the villain finally accepts the blood challenge and calls out his prey. Bleed lunges like a coiled viper, sparking the duel. Surviving onlookers gasp, thinking the two warriors are merely fiercely glaring at one another without moving, but a veteran trembles, whispering the terrifying truth. The lethal, invisible clash of auras has already begun, right before their eyes. Thus ignites the legendary showdown that will absolutely dictate the Black Wolf tribe's ultimate destiny. Attila stands, like an unmoving mountain in his combat stance. Opposite him, Bleed radiates killing intent, gripping his deadly weapon. Then, without warning, he kicks off the ground. He literally blurs out of existence. Attila's eyes widen as his target completely vanishes. Bleed then materializes right at his blind spot. Chaining strikes a wicked slash tears into our hero's shoulder. Utterly shocked, Attila reels from the ghost-like footwork. Bleed viciously dives back in, and our hero instantly knows dodging is totally impossible. The villain arrogantly sneers, mocking his naive belief that raw brute strength alone could ever conquer true martial technique. Calling him pathetic, he brags about being perfectly trained to slaughter clumsy, muscle-brained fools. Attila frantically blocks the deadly onslaught, gritting his teeth as he silently acknowledges the assassin's overwhelming mastery. A terrifying hurricane of slashes continuously forces him backward. Zero openings exist to even raise his heavy axe. Bleed mockingly claps, impressed a savage blocked his lightning-fast execution strikes. But playtime is over. He fiercely channels aura for his final, lethal art. Exploding like a cannonball, he surges forward. Attila desperately tracks the supersonic phantom. Right as they clash, the villain roars his absolute victory. Vaulting over the hero, he executes a flawless, precise slash. In pure battle technique and experience, the assassin is miles ahead. Yet defiance burns in Attila's eyes, remembering that this flesh wound is absolutely nothing compared to his master's training. Spotting a microscopic gap, he counters. He violently rams his heavy axe handle into the villain's gut. The bone-crushing impact connects perfectly, forcing a fountain of blood from Bleed's mouth. The surviving tribesmen erupt into hopeful cheers, screaming that their warrior triumphed. Attila stands seemingly victorious, but collapsed in the dirt, the bleeding assassin crazily cackles. Attila demands what is so damn amusing. Spitting blood, he sinisterly giggles that it is finally time for the hidden effect to activate. Confusion strikes the hero. Then, the snake reveals. His weapon was heavily coated in forbidden berserker venom. He sadistically asks if the boy comprehends the horrifying fate of anyone corrupted by that cursed toxin. Seething with absolute rage, Attila roars, curses at the coward. Bleed dramatically points, declaring that the infected boy, himself, is now fated to slaughter his own beloved Black Wolf tribe. The horrified young warrior stares at his trembling hands, entirely lost as chaotic venom corrupts him. A violent anomaly forcefully invades his veins. Agonizing screams erupt as a terrifying, sinister energy completely swallows his entire existence. The villain gleefully screams for him to devolve into a mindless monster and rot in hell. Meanwhile, Attila feels his flesh melting from an ungodly inferno. Desperately fighting the corruption, he panics. Right then, the majestic forest calamity bows deeply before, his soul reverently hailing him as the destined heir to the absolute soul of greed. Shocked beyond belief, he stammers, realizing the mythical creature is communicating. The ancient being reveals that this telepathy is only possible because the berserker venom pushed him right onto the boundary of monstrous evolution. The majestic entity then parts its massive jaws, commanding him to inherit its power. Pure light flashes as a celestial dagger suddenly materializes in his grip. The holy beast proclaims, "This is the supreme divine sword of the great martial king," an artifact exclusively bestowed upon the conqueror of the legend named Mule. It promises this godly blade will trigger his ultimate awakening once his proud Black Wolf tribal soul fully synchronizes, inspiring him to keep fighting. With its final breath, it roars to protect his precious family. Instantly, a glowing system prompt suddenly activates, detailing the mythical stats of the weapon, Mule. The dark poison smoke shatters as our awakened hero glares intensely at his foe. Grunts tremble, entirely paralyzed by his overwhelming aura. Bleed sweats, questioning why the boy stands perfectly still. Smirking, the reincarnated predator softly whispers his own name. With absolute killing intent, he announces the final judgment. Like a phantom lightning bolt, the hero violently blitzes forward, completely erasing his presence. Before the assassin can even blink, a bloody gash explodes across his terrified face. Landing flawlessly, the awakened predator resets his stance. Another invisible, devastating slash connects, forcing desperate screams of sheer denial. The divine blade sits deeply buried inside his non, his shoulder. He stares in disbelief at the cold steel piercing his flesh. Recognizing the legendary aura, he gasps. Is this the divine weapon mule? Giving him zero time to breathe, Attila unleashes the final strike. The devastating impact sends Blada flying. He crashes, face down, drowning in his own crimson pool. The bitter truth finally strikes him. Attila was chosen by the divine beast. The world had always been cruel to him. Born in the crushing shadow of a genius brother, his entire existence was a mere comparison to the great Munuk. Yet a burning desire pushed him forward. He chased desperately after the brother he so deeply idolized. He pushed his limits until he coughed up blood, craving that ultimate strength. But the tides of fate shifted during one fateful war. Munuk, the absolute apex predator of the Black Wolves, was slaughtering enemies relentlessly. Blada would always scold him for fighting solo, but the genius would merely laugh it off, apologizing for his bloodlust. Still, Blada hated watching his brother bear the entire burden. Despite the warnings, Munuk remained the storm at the very center of the Crete battlefield. Suddenly, Blada's eyes widen in horror. A lethal threat emerges. Screaming his brother's name, he dashes forward. An assassin lunges for Munuk's blind spot. Throwing himself in the way, Blada takes a devastating slash to the face. Munuk roars in agony. Bleeding heavily for his sacrifice, he falls to his knees before his idol. Desperation leaking into his voice, Blada demands answers. Why was he barred from the vanguard after bleeding so much for the tribe? Munuk simply lowers his head in sorrow. He softly explains that with those ruined eyes, Blada's days as a warrior are over. Instead of glory, his sole purpose was violently stripped away. Suddenly, a scout reports an incoming ambush. As Munuk turns his back to march to war, the heartbreaking reality shatters Blada. He was the only one clinging to their shared dream. Agony turns to blinding rage. He screams that Munuk could never comprehend his absolute despair and rejects his tragic fate. In his twisted mind, the brother who discarded him and the entire ungrateful Black Wolf tribe were the true monsters. Consumed by venomous hatred, he rises, swearing to burn their world to ashes. He charges like a madman, roaring that anyone in his path will die. Standing firm, Attila glares at the fallen warrior, ordering him to silence his selfish delusions. He fiercely demands that Blada own up to his bloodstained sins. Aura erupting around him, Attila vows that trash like him will never escape justice. With unshakable resolve, he swears to protect his family and comrades from any more tragedy. Channeling his power, he rockets forward, roaring that the massacre ends today. Their gazes lock in a deadly clash of wills. Blada and Attila collide in midair. The heavens tremble from the monumental impact. Attila's blade strikes true, landing a devastating head-on blow. In that fleeting second, clarity washes over Blada. He realizes Munuk's harshness was actually a desperate act of love. Yet his breaking heart only wished his brother had let them stand as equals. Memories of their glorious battles flash before his fading eyes, fighting side by side against the world. The distant spectators hold their breath. The chaotic storm finally settles. Blada breathes his last, and a heavy, hard-fought peace washes over the ruined village. With the shadow lifted, Attila sets his sights on a new horizon, the fairy realm. He begins his heartfelt farewells, announcing his immediate departure. A villager gasps in shock, while another pleads that the tribe's safety depends entirely on him, becoming their new chief. Stepping forward, Munuk shakes his head. He declares that the boy cannot shoulder such a mundane title. The crowd erupts in protest, swearing Attila is their greatest protector, a smirk crossing his face. Munuk decides to demonstrate the harsh truth. The villagers gasp as the mighty warrior grips his battle axe. Without warning, Munuk launches a lethal strike, caught off guard by the killing intent. Attila's instincts ignite. He desperately deflects his father's earth-shattering blow. Straining against the heavy steel, he demands what? This madness means. Munuk chuckles, praising the boy's lightning-fast reflexes. But his eyes narrow. He exposes Attila's pathetic footwork, calling his stance utterly riddled with fatal flaws. Attila stands frozen, the weight of the lesson sinking in. His father solemnly reveals that the boy harbors a terrifying dormant power. The legendary blade in his hands is proof of a world-changing destiny. Munuk warns that true warriors are forged in the fires of absolute despair. Blada let the darkness devour his inner light. Gripping his shoulder, he orders him to temper his body, mind, and spirit, like divine steel folded 100 times. His final resonant command, no matter the nightmare, never let your soul's radiant flame extinguish. Emotion swelling in his chest, Attila bows, his head etching the master's words into his heart. Relieved, Munuk urges him to carve his own legendary path. Suddenly, the gentle Araku blocks his way. With a bittersweet smile, she softly whispers that their bonds will never break. She quickly drapes a mystical cord around his neck, catching him off guard. Araku embraces him tightly, securing the Ponakli, ancient amulet. Carved from the divine beast's fang, it radiates a sacred protective aura. She promises it will shield him. Deeply moved, Attila whispers his profound gratitude. Breaking his stoic facade, Munuk crushes his son in a desperate hug. Later, standing far on the horizon, Attila casts one last look at the village gates, engraving his beloved people into his memories. Night falls, and he sets up a lonely camp in the Whispering Woods. Bathed in the Ramada, campfire's glow, he smiles as his hard-earned dinner sizzles perfectly. Snatching up the smoking hot meat, his mouth waters at the savory aroma. But just as he opens wide for that glorious first bite, he freezes. An ominous rustling echoes from the pitch-black tree line. His eyes dart toward the shadows glaring into. Staring into the pitch-black forest, Attila finally breaks the silence, demanding to know how long his unseen stalker plans to hide. A tiny divine beast cub hesitantly steps out from the shadows. Meeting its gaze, Attila sighs, repeating his stern question. The sacred little creature peeks out from behind a massive trunk, trembling slightly. With a calm but firm voice, the swordsman tells the mythical infant to run along home. It merely plops onto the dirt. Attila stares back flatly, stating that this perilous journey is no place for a cub. He orders the little guy to scurry back to its nest. But right on cue, a loud rumble erupts from its tiny belly, its tearful eyes locking onto his rations. Defeated by the cuteness, Attila tosses the meat, commanding it to eat and disappear. The ravenous beast clamps its jaws onto the massive chunk, dangling stubbornly in the air. Within moments, the stuffed infant passes out, completely cuddling its precious dinner. Attila realizes he just lost his entire meal. He scoffs, labeling the little glutton a savage underneath that adorable fluff, and turns his back. Yet after just one step, a bizarre noise forces him to freeze. He demands to know what the creature is doing. The cub suddenly hacks up, a mysterious object, startling Attila completely. He scolds the furball for giving him a heart attack, only to see it proudly presenting a simple twig. Completely baffled, he questions if this trash is a tribute, loudly rejecting the useless offering. Unbothered, the tiny beast curls up warmly in his lap, leaving him utterly bewildered. Does the lingering scent of its fallen mother still cling to his armor? This was the very same innocent life the tyrant Blada held hostage. A majestic guardian sacrificed everything to shield this tiny soul. Knowing that heavy truth, Attila refuses to drag the orphan into a blood-soaked destiny. Gazing down at the peacefully snoring furball, he rubs his temples at this massive headache. Out of nowhere, the mythical infant waddles over, snuggling against his legendary blade. A sudden realization hits him like lightning. This cub is bound by fate to protect the sacred weapon. Golden dawn pierces the forest canopy, signaling a new beginning. The sleepy guardian rouses from its slumber, blinking at the empty woods. Panic strikes as it realizes the swordsman has vanished. Terrified, the tiny beast sprints blindly down the dirt trail, but after a frantic dash it freezes, utterly alone in the vast wilderness. Fat tears well up as it begins to whimper. Stepping from the shadows, Attila brandishes the heavy steel, asking if this is what the crybaby wanted. He refuses to hand over the dangerous blade, but with a swift pull, he rips a strip from his blood-stained bandages. Carefully, he knots the rugged cloth around the cub's fluffy neck. Claiming it as his welcoming gift, the warrior pivots away and commands his new companion to march. He drops a cold warning, fall behind, and he won't look back. Eagerly, the tiny guardian dashes forward affectionately, brushing against his armored boots. With its tail wagging happily, the beast trots beside its new master. Attila grumbles that their stomachs will stay empty until they spot civilization, urging the little furball to pick up the pace. Together, man and beast conquer the treacherous mountain ridge. Miles away, an alluring figure scours their progress through a mystical crystal sphere, a wicked smirk playing on her lips. She whispers praise for this savage, unyielding warrior who shattered her deadly venomous needle with bare strength. The notorious sorceress, Botry Elizabeth, marvels at how such a monstrous talent stayed hidden from the world. Her magical eyes gleam with dangerous obsession for her new prey. Attila exhales deeply as towering stone walls pierce the horizon. The first major stronghold awaits them. Pushing open the creaky tavern doors, his starving companion lunges straight for the scraps. Sitting rigidly at the counter, Attila scolds the ravenous furball with a fatherly sense of panic. Thankfully, the sweaty innkeeper arrives with a monstrous platter of house specials, bowing deeply for the long wait. A mountain of steaming, pillowy meat buns crashes onto the wood. Tearing into his massive feast, Attila casually interrogates the owner about the legendary fairy kingdom. The barkeep scratches his head, completely clueless, prompting a knowing sigh from the swordsman. After all, the sacred fairy realm is an elusive sky island drifting fiercely above the northern seas of the Kuriel Shrudra continent. Downing his ale, he mentally curses the fact that this entire world is just a web novel he originally authored. He silently regrets his lazy world-building habits. The poor innkeeper gapes at the rapidly vanishing mountain of food. Meanwhile, Attila calculates his deadly route to the northern ocean, knowing he must breach a merciless death zone first. Terrifying wastelands swarming with colossal titans and ancient dragons block his destined path. Worse yet, he must butcher the nightmarish horrors lurking in the uncharted shadows beyond. Weighing his catastrophic survival odds, an agonizing migraine throbs against his temples. Suddenly, a drunken slur echoes from a shady corner, mocking his desperate inquiry about the mythical fairy, Utopia. The filthy thugs erupt into roaring laughter, taunting the warrior for acting like a delusional child. A burly brute kicks back his chair, roaring that bedtime stories don't exist in the real world. Sneering viciously, the thug demands the swordsman wake up from his pathetic fantasies. Unfazed, Attila's gaze turns ice cold, telling the garbage to mind his own business. The warrior rises, radiating sheer killing intent, demanding the trash scram immediately. Enraged, the drunkard draws his weapon, barking that he will butcher the cute furball into a cheap tavern stew instantly. The divine beast sinks its razor-sharp fangs right into the thug's pointing finger. Attila yawns, waving off the pathetic scene of the screaming drunk. Without warning, a massive boot shatters the wooden table, sending the bleeding thug crashing across the room. Both warrior and barkeep lock eyes on the imposing newcomer. It is Otto, the legendary commander of the Kiri mercenaries, who coldly growls that cheap trash ruins the taste of good ale. The trembling tavern keeper stared in absolute terror. He frantically begged Attila to escape while he still could. Attila tilted, his head amused by the knight's sheer arrogance. The terrified keeper whispered the man's true identity. Otto. The legendary ogre blade Attila, smirked, intrigued by this fallen knight turned ruthless outlaw. Otto sneered coldly, stating that he answered to absolutely no one. Suddenly, the rogue's bloodthirsty lackeys lunged at Attila with murderous intent, but his piercing gaze locked onto his prey. Flash. In a mere fraction of a second, the entire gang was utterly crushed beneath his feet. Otto stood, frozen in absolute disbelief. Trembling at his decimated crew, he demanded to know this monster's name. Smiling dangerously, Attila declared himself the story's original author. Ripping his shirt to reveal explosive muscles, he challenged the leader. Otto panicked and desperately begged for mercy. The defeated bandits immediately dropped to their knees, crying for forgiveness. Attila stepped back, casually claiming it was nothing but pure self-defense. Shrugging off the absolute devastation, he claimed they started it. Out of nowhere, the quote, grateful tavern keeper grasped his hands in profound thanks, leaving Attila bewildered. Snatching a crumpled bounty poster, he asked if these thugs were wanted men. The keeper nodded vigorously. The local lord had branded them outlaws, and the deeply suffering village was finally avenged. But why did the bounty demand them alive? The innkeeper nervously whispered a dark, chilling theory. They were mere cannon fodder for an upcoming war. Whispers of a bloody, imminent clash were spreading like wildfire, and their local forces were vastly outnumbered. Desperate for survival, Lord Bertrand was forcefully conscripting every single available soul, even the absolute worst scumbags. A wicked smile crept across Attila's face. This was absolutely perfect timing. Shortly after, they breached the grand gates of the Lord's estate. Inside the imposing hall, a stern voice questioned if this boy truly captured the notorious bandits for a prized warhorse. The commanding noble formally revealed himself as Lord Bertrand. Dropping to one knee, the fearless youth confidently confirmed his victory. With a sly grin, he also demanded the heavy gold bounty for crushing the mercenary trash. Furious at his audacity, Lord Bertrand scolded his reckless talk of war invading Gascony. Unfazed, Attila maintained his icy, unshakable composure, stating he was merely bracing for the inevitable bloodshed. Stunned, the mighty lord aggressively demanded his source for this classified intel. Attila exposed the town's desperate troop shortage, perfectly deducing that every criminal was being weaponized for a massive, brutal, and bloody showdown. against the fearsome Akites to the east. This brilliant deduction masterfully explained the total absence of town guards and outlaws across the entire vulnerable village. The noble stood completely paralyzed by this terrifying intellect. Attila kept pressing, revealing the lords secretly needed them. Brought in breathing to serve as ruthless meat shields in battle, awestruck Bertrand praised his monstrous insight. The bold young warrior smoothly countered, claiming the savage barbarians worshipped the lord's legendary title, the Hound of the Southern Mountain, with pure, tear-inducing terror. Puffed up with absolute pride, Lord Bertrand gloated that his overwhelming fame had even reached the untamed wastelands. Instantly, Attila shattered his ego, shamelessly admitting it was completely fabricated flattery. Yet he bowed, vowing his absolute loyalty in exchange for a handsome reward. Bertrand stroked his chin, acknowledging that annihilating the infamous Kiri mercenary band truly demanded a grand prize. He granted 10 shimmering gold coins and any elite warhorse, earning Attila's swift gratitude. But then, the towering noble dropped a heavy, dangerous ultimatum. Reaching out, he declared that to truly prove his unwavering worth, the mysterious youth must march into hell alongside Gasconu's vanguard. Behind bars, Otto's crew gasped in sheer horror. But Attila, without skipping 18, single beat accepted instantly. A predator's smirk formed. He had masterminded this exact invitation. Diving into this bloody massacre was Sam. The only way to achieve his true goal, he had to force a specific legend onto the board. The one and only Charles Einhard, the absolute protagonist, feared by his enemies as the merciless god of death, and the sole key to finding the Fairy King deep in the fortress. The massive drums of war echoed loudly. Locked away. Terrified, Otto pleaded with Attila, while the doomed mercenaries watched in suffocating dread. Losing his mind, the fallen knight screamed hysterically, begging his new overlord for a miraculous escape. Covering his ears, Attila coldly ordered him to shut up and drop the boss title, casually dropping that he was only 16. This shocking truth shattered Otto's brain. Blinking in utter disbelief, he stammered, "Shouldn't you be 46? A single death glare from Attila instantly made him swallow his words in sheer terror. Otto frantically argued that dodging this suicidal draft meant a guaranteed execution. Unfazed Attila scoffed at the very idea. He commanded his new pawns to march into the bloodbath, obediently promising them total salvation. The veteran outlaw fell dead silent, his pride warring with his fear. Gripping the cold iron, he recklessly challenged the boy to a one-on-one death match. Attila raised an eyebrow at this desperate gamble. A formal joust. The ultimate clash of honor and aura between two prideful warriors. A life-or-death struggle with absolutely everything on the line. Only one absolute rule existed in this arena. The strongest reigns supreme, crushing all titles. The victor claims fate itself, while the loser is erased. Otto's eyes burned with ancient knightly pride, admitting that while his brute force was broken, his mastery of the lance on horseback remained unmatched. Attila smiled. In the web novel's original timeline, this exact outlaw was Expado. Otto was destined to be a nameless casualty, a mere footnote crushed under Duke Gascon's boots. But Attila's arrival in this new reality was shattering the original plot. Letting Otto die here was out of the question. To drag the Kiri mercenaries straight into the brewing war, Attila fully embraces the high-stakes wager. His terms are absolute. If he claims victory, they fight. If Otto somehow wins, they walk free under Bertrand's conditions. A chillingly calm smile graces Attila's face as he accepts the challenge. Desperate roars echo from the captured mercenaries, betting their very survival on their captain. Otto glares at the impending clash, sweating under the pressure, while Attila simply breathes. 10 days later, the fateful jousting tournament begins. Two mighty warriors enter the colossal arena. The booming voice of the herald greets the noble lords and breathless ladies. A thunderous roar shakes the stands, igniting the grand spectacle. From his high seat, Lord Bertrand observes with calculating eyes. The herald's voice shatters the tension, declaring this an all-or-nothing war of pride. He demands a deafening applause from the crowd. The blood-soaked rules are violently simple. As the steel lances are drawn, a furious head-on collision of pure power. The combatants lock eyes from the absolute edges of the bloody sands. No magic, no tricks, only the raw, piercing power of the lance. The warrior, who crushes their enemy into the dirt, claims ultimate victory. In this ring of death, noble titles mean nothing. It is a brutal clash where only supreme strength takes all. The herald spins toward the violently screaming crowd. The air grows heavy as the final countdown to bloodshed begins. With a dramatic sweep of his arm, the gates blast open. Otto, the legendary demon sword, marches onto the battlefield atop his massive warhorse. Vicious death threats rain down from the ruthless spectators. A mysterious woman in the shadows chuckles, noting his immense unpopularity. A furious spectator turns to curse at her but freezes completely. The hooded beauty simply presses a delicate finger to her lips, demanding absolute silence. The infamous witch Bailly Arete purrs with dark amusement, only here to devour the sight of her darling Attila. The once raging men are instantly paralyzed by her bewitching aura. Suddenly, the herald's voice explodes, calling forth the challenger. Emerging from the western shadows, he roars the name of Attila, the savage barbarian whose terrifying, unfathomable might single-handedly annihilated the entire Kiri mercenary fleet. The chained mercenaries scream in pure desperation, begging their captain to fight for their doomed lives. Otto catches their tragic wails, a heavy flush of humiliation burning his face. Across the deadly sands, the barbarian simply snarls the mercenary's name. A mocking smirk crosses Attila's lips as he praises the shiny armor. Otto spits back that the barbarian's arrogant breathing will end shortly. The herald screams at the top of his lungs. The monumental clash of fates is finally here. Attila, the beast of the Black Wolf tribe, against Otto, the menacing demon sword. With a final thunderous roar, the death match is set. The herald bows to the roaring crowd. The epic collision between the legendary demon sword and the unstoppable barbarian Attila. A crimson flag slashes through the air. The battle explodes into action. Otto violently spurs his horse, his lethal lance locked and ready. In a flash, Attila charges like a raging beast, burning with killing intent. Otto locks onto his prey, tasting absolute victory. He unleashes a devastating full-force thrust, but Attila simply bends with the wind, coldly tracking, the deadly steel hovering mere inches from his eyes. Otto's blood freezes at this impossible display of reflexes. The terrified mercenaries gasp in absolute horror. Did he just catch a galloping lance bare-handed with a demonic grin? Attila whispers that he's simply returning the favor. Ding Lance mastery skill forcefully activates. He twists the heavy weapon like a toy and rockets it straight toward Otto's chest. The mercenary watches the silver blur of death approaching. Bam! Attila brutally slams the blunt edge of the heavy shaft into him. A fountain of blood erupts from Otto's mouth. The bone-crushing impact nearly tears him off his saddle. Lady Elizabeth smiles sadistically at the beautiful carnage. She purrs, calling him a beautifully unhinged monster, a true bloodthirsty berserker. Attila casually snaps the massive lance in half. The stadium erupts as the herald declares the Black Wolf beast the undisputed victor of round 1. Tensions skyrocket as the second clash rapidly approaches. Desperate Otto summons a gigantic skull-crushing warhammer. He knows the grim odds are violently stacked against him. Round 2 kicks off with a deafening roar. Like a speeding meteor, Attila blasts forward on his round warhorse, devouring the distance. He narrows his eyes, vowing to blast his enemy into the dirt and finish this right now. Driven by absolute certainty, he pushes his steed to blinding speeds. Otto furiously gallops to meet his doom head-on. The trapped mercenaries scream a final prayer for their captain. Swoosh! A massive warhammer tornadoes through the sky. Otto stares as sudden death spirals. Closer. Snap. The witch casually clicks her fingers. A wicked smirk curves her lips. Boom! A terrifying magical force violently erupts from the very earth. Both warriors are violently thrown off balance by the shockwave. Attila's panicked horse bucks wildly. Snapping his head around, he scans the screaming crowd hunting for the magical sniper. His predatory gaze locks instantly onto Bailly Arete. The seductive witch simply stares back, her silent eyes overflowing with dangerous secrets. Panic erupts as the mercenaries scream that the beast is completely out of control. Thinking the heavens intervened, Otto seizes his golden opening. Attila violently discards his shattered lance. A terrifying realization suddenly hits. The strike misses, but his fighting spirit burns. Suddenly, Attila executes a crazy maneuver. He violently leaps straight off his mount toward his rival. Otto is completely paralyzed by this insane tactic. Attila lands heavily, right behind the captain, locking his arm around his throat. The announcer screams in pure shock at the hijacking. He questions if such a wild move breaks the sacred jousting rules. Lord Bertrand merely watches, a dark smile forming. Attila calmly declares this second clash as his absolute victory. The panicked beast continues its reckless stampede across the arena, rearing violently with both warriors trapped on its back. Annoyed by this repeating chaos, Attila stubbornly keeps Otto completely pinned. Suddenly, the frenzied steed launches them. Attila lands flawlessly on his feet, while the unfortunate Otto crashes brutally into the dirt. His loyal subordinates and the mystical beasts scream, realizing death is near. Attila's raging mount charges madly toward the helpless. Otto Bayet watches the lethal crisis with sharp eyes. Meanwhile, Attila stands tall beside his fallen foe. With one commanding word, he dominates the beast. Otto's terrified mount flinches and flees in absolute terror from Attila's overwhelming aura. The entire stadium falls into breathless silence, including Betrayal Elizabeth, who carefully observes from the shadows. Attila fiercely drives his massive blade into the earth beside Otto's shattered weapon. The legendary demon sword Otto remains kneeling in defeat. Suddenly, Attila extends a respectful hand, demanding round 3. Otto stares in disbelief at his rival's honor. Grasping his hand, he rises, igniting his fighting spirit once more. The herald of the arena passionately roars that the ultimate clash between these titans has arrived. From above, Betrayal Elizabeth smirks, highly amused that the warrior noticed her secret illusion. Facing the roaring crowd, the announcer thanks the masses for their patience during the chaotic disruption. He then screams that this final death match will be fought entirely on foot. As both monsters take their lethal stances, he declares a lawless bloodbath where anything goes. With a swift hand signal, the ultimate war begins. Attila explodes forward like a missile, but the cunning Otto desperately evades the strike. In brutal retaliation, Otto swings his blade with deadly intent. He mentally analyzes Attila's terrifying pressure. Every single impact carries mountain-shattering destruction. Gritting his teeth, Otto calculates his survival. Simply evade the opening strike. Attila instantly vaults into the heavens to unleash a devastating execution. Otto barely dodges as the colossal blade violently craters the earth. Sensing an absolute opening, Otto roars, claiming victory. But Attila mocks his foolishness, executing a blinding spin while anchoring his weapon's momentum. The flat of the heavy blade brutally smashes into Otto's skull. The crushing shockwave sends him flying, forcing him to realize he is fighting an absolute monster. Attila stalks forward as Otto collapses completely. From the stands, panicked soldiers scream for their bleeding commander, only to be violently silenced. Suddenly, desperate cries erupt across the stadium, begging for the slaughter to end. Trembling, Otto forces his battered body upright, bleeding profusely while gripping his shattered blade. A subordinate shrieks for his absolute surrender, weeping that his honor is proven. Another desperately pledges his very life, vowing to fight the bloody war. He howls that their glorious captain cannot perish in this dirt. Glaring back at his weeping brothers, Otto scoffs that even in chains, they are far too loud. Yet a bittersweet smile forms, admitting he would beg for them too. The shattered steel slips from his grasp and hits the bloody earth. Instantly, the arena herald roars that the mighty Otto is utterly broken, raising the flag of surrender. He crowns the invincible Attila as champion. Otto blacks out, plummeting forward. Instantly, Attila catches his rival before he strikes the dirt. With deep respect, he declares this defeated captain is no mere thug. He publicly honors him as a true warrior worthy of absolute glory. The stadium erupts into deafening cheers, while Lord Bertrand observes with chilling focus. In the shadows, Baye analyzes the majestic victory with a mysterious smirk. The mystical white beast happily dashes across the ruined sands. As twilight falls, the ecstatic mercenaries hoist their new hero onto their shoulders. Later, under the moonlight, it is revealed that by his command, rough mercenaries officially swear loyalty to Bertrand's forces. Inside, a boisterous tavern, overflowing mugs, toast to the rebirth of the Kiri combat squad. A bandaged Otto drunkenly roars that the boss is paying for this feast, commanding his brothers to gorge themselves. A ravenous soldier demands mountains of meat, and the joyful host happily obliges. Meanwhile, Attila, cradling the mystical beast, marvels at their freakish recovery speed. Otto proudly boasts that a genuine master gracefully swallows defeat and proves absolute loyalty, yet he is strictly banned from alcohol. He violently whines about being completely sober since escaping his filthy cell. His panicked brothers wrestle him away from the liquor. Exactly 2 weeks later, Attila casually chews a meat skewer, noticing his former rival is completely healed. The cheerful tavern owner casually approaches, gossiping about their upcoming deployment into the blood-soaked war, fully believing they will become legends. Attila sharply questions his intelligence source. The nervous man admits a drunk soldier spilled the secret, nervously warning their ale supply is vanishing. Smirking, Attila immediately orders him, "Don't move a muscle." The tavern keeper feigns confusion, but Attila rises from the table, eyes narrowing as he declares, "This imposter is definitely not the real owner." The fake keeper plays dumb, asking what he means. But Attila coldly explains, he lacks any human scent. Like a lifeless doll. A glaring flaw for a man supposedly cooking and serving hot meals. "Who exactly are you?" Attila demands. Suddenly, the keeper's flesh begins to twist and morph right before their very eyes. Otto immediately rushes forward. Attila readies his stance. The newly revealed masked figure smirks, praising Attila's incredibly sharp warrior instincts. Seeing through his perfect disguise was no easy feat. But knowing the truth, it changes absolutely nothing for their imminent doom. Brandishing his deadly weapon, he promises to send Attila to the afterlife. He launches a lethal strike, but Attila evades. The sharp blade shatters the chandelier, plunging the entire tavern into pitch blackness. Yet Attila's senses remain fiercely razor-sharp. Otto panics in the suffocating darkness. Attila firmly orders him to stay calm. But Otto screams back in pure, unfiltered terror. How can anyone stay calm with a shadow assassin, hunting them? Suddenly, lethal killing intent emerges right behind poor Otto. A deadly strike descends. At the final microsecond, Attila yanks Otto away from death's icy grip. Keep your mouth shut, and hide in the corner. Attila locks onto the shadow, mocking the killer's cheap disguise tricks. He confidently declares that his strength and build give him away completely. You are Rashid, a pathetic second-rate assassin. The masked killer freezes up, shifting silently into a lethal combat stance. Attila smirks. Hit the nail on the head, didn't I? Instantly, Rashid completely vanishes, swallowed by the shadows, but Attila ghosts right behind him, pressing cold steel against his throat. He viciously demands answers. Who sent you? He promises a swift, painless death in exchange for pure honesty. But if the assassin dares to lie, his skin will be slowly, agonizingly peeled from his living bones. Rashid scoffs, questioning if a dull sword hilt can really cause such hellish pain. The assassin attempts a desperate counterattack, but he freezes mid-strike. A hidden projectile savagely cuts the air. Attila flawlessly dodges. The stray blade violently shatters the enemy's mask in two. As the broken pieces clatter heavily down, Rashid stumbles backward in absolute utter shock. Face exposed, he demands to know how Attila tracked his flawless shadow movements. Attila smirks coldly. The cheap stench of hashish. Rashid gasps in pure shattered disbelief. The young warrior then ruthlessly explains. The vile scent was heavily soaked into his hidden blades. The defeated assassin trembles. You read my entire killing flow, just from a smell. He collapses to his knees, utterly broken. Rashid raises his blade to end his own miserable life. A warrior's death. But Attila's iron grip intercepts the fatal blade. He whispers one single word, Kasap. Rashid's eyes violently widen. How do you know my son's name? Attila stays completely mysterious. That is none of your concern. In absolute truth, Kasap is his cherished bloodline. A boy, destined to become an overpowered future ally. Consumed by total devastating fatherly despair, Rashid begs for mercy, offering his soul to protect the child. Attila smiles darkly. There is only one single condition. The desperate assassin violently swallows his pride. Become my loyal dog. Attila's eyes gleam with absolute dominance. Just follow my commands, and your son lives. Without a single hesitation, Rashid bows his head, swearing a binding blood oath to his new master. Awaiting future orders, Rashid suddenly begins barking like a literal hound. Attila's sweat drops instantly. Stop that. I didn't mean it literally. Otto's crew jumps at the bizarre, unhinged scene. Meanwhile, hidden in the distant shadows, Lady Elizabeth silently observes the absolute chaos. Her mind spins with utter confusion. Is this some dark, ancient ritual dedicated to a forgotten deity? She shakes her head, burying her fleeting doubts. A fierce anticipation burns within her for these bizarre new allies. Soon the gentle blooming spring fades away, replaced by brutal bone-crushing training. Under the scorching summer sun in the southern continent, a massive armored cavalry fiercely advances. A helpless city is engulfed in raging hellfire. The drums of war loudly echo. Heavily armored knights crash through the fiery gates. The legendary Golden Lion mercenary group has arrived. Commanded by the fearsome Charles Einhard elite, lancers march with earth-shattering precision. Majestic war banners pierce the smoke-filled sky. The thunderous cavalry charges like an unstoppable tsunami. Bloodlust fills the searing air. An enemy commander roars, ordering the absolute slaughter of every Gasconian coward. In response, a rival soldier screams for vengeance, demanding the Aquitanians unleash their true might. Kill them all. But in a blinding flash of silver, his head goes flying. Sliced, completely clean off, his surviving men shriek in absolute blood-curdling horror. Suddenly, a massive battle axe spirals through the chaotic sky, crashing into the earth with explosive force. A lone, terrifying figure charges forward on a frenzied steed. The terrified enemy soldiers panic, bracing for the entire Gasconian army. But realization hits them like a truck. It is just one single, absolutely insane warrior. Attila wrestles desperately with his wildly out-of-control horse, yet the demonic beast bulldozes straight into the enemy's ironclad ranks, sending heavily armored soldiers flying like ragdolls. Amidst the bloody chaos, Attila unleashes a devastating spin attack. This definitely wasn't the original plan, but backing down is totally impossible now. He pulverizes an enemy knight, grumbling about drawing way too much attention, drawing all eyes. A terrified soldier screams he is an absolute demon, no longer human. Witnessing this slaughter, the commander frantically orders a full retreat. The broken army desperately flees on horseback, but Attila's eyes gleam. He refuses to let a single prey escape. Snatching a massive bundle of iron spears from the blood-soaked earth, he prepares his stance. The active skill spear throw is instantly triggered. The lethal projectiles streak toward the cowards like lightning. A warhorse is brutally struck down first. Moments later, the terrified men are pierced by the unrelenting spears. Both riders and their mounts crash violently into the dirt. Attila fiercely spurs his warhorse roaring attack. His loyal men follow, begging him not to charge alone. Otto finally realizes the bloody clash has already begun. The trembling enemies finally recognize him. Otto, the legendary ogre blade of the Kiri mercenaries. Realizing this terrifying truth, they know the ruthless executioner Attila is surely hunting them. Following Attila's absolute command, the elite Kiri mercenaries advance like a perfect storm, executing their deadly roles flawlessly. They brace for the epic clash against that man. Meanwhile, far away, a grand investiture ceremony unfolds inside the cathedral. Count Aku de Aule officially receives his noble title. Then, Charles Einhard is knighted. He swears a sacred oath to shield the innocent and stand as their ultimate defender. The noble women watching whisper about his breathtaking aura. They swoon, marveling that this gorgeous warrior is merely 18 years old. However, two arrogant nobles violently reject, seeing a lowly commoner rise to knighthood viciously mocking his peasant bloodline. One sneers, claiming the glorious Charles is absolutely nothing, but a pathetic meat shield destined to die for the real lords. Suddenly, a heavy hand firmly taps the boasting noble on the shoulder. A towering, muscular warrior steps up coldly, warning that spewing such trash talk is a fatal mistake. Ruach, the fierce captain of the special assault unit, growls that insulting Charles is practically a death wish. Boiling with absolute outrage, the noble demands his identity, flaunting his precious Baron title. Instantly, another man steps forward, smoothing things over by apologizing to Baron Ruach for the disrespect. He bows, introducing himself as Pippin, vice captain of the legendary Golden Lion mercenaries. The arrogant Baron totally ignores the polite greeting aggressively, demanding how Pippin knows his face. Unfazed Pippin calmly states that every guest at this ceremony has been thoroughly memorized. Shaken to the core, the noble asks if they truly memorized all 800 VIPs. He scoffs, calling it a pathetic bluff, a classic peasant lie. Pippin simply offers a chillingly polite apology and turns away, but the furious Baron violently blocks his path, screeching about how filthy commoners dare insult nobility and walk away free. Keeping his dangerously calm smile, Pippin explains that Ruach merely warned him about crossing Charles. He drops the cold fact that insulting a sworn knight without cause is illegal. He then states that the arrogant Baron won't escape punishment. The flustered noble calls him a worthless pest, loudly barking at him to get lost. Pippin politely excuses himself, fading away. Deep into the quiet night, he suddenly halts in the moonlit forest, catching sight of an insanely fast insect landing on his arm. He marvels at its lightning speed. From the darkness, Charles asks what is troubling him, and Pippin sighs, noting the flashy ceremony is finally done. Tomorrow they march into the fires of war. Charles chuckles, telling him to ignore those useless, do-nothing, aristocratic fools. His eyes burn with absolute ambition. He vows to conquer this nation and crush anyone who dares disrespect his blood-forged comrades. Smiling Pippin wholeheartedly agrees, sealing the promise. Charles tightly bumps fists with him, cementing their bond. Then Pippin's tone shifts, revealing he caught whispers of an unbelievably monstrous mercenary lurking in Gasconu. He warns that this mystery warrior reportedly wields an overwhelming power, rivaling Charles Einhard himself. Charles eagerly questions if the mercenary is really that strong. Flashing a dangerously confident grin, Charles declares he is dying to clash swords with him on the battlefield. Elsewhere, Otto excitedly asks Attila if he spotted the mythical dungeon in the sky. The fierce young barbarian just blinks, completely missing the mystical reference. Laughing, Otto explains, it is because Attila possessed a godlike grasp of the enemy's hidden camp and actual troop numbers, but Attila flatly denies having any such divine ability. While his loyal men wildly celebrate, Otto passionately claims the very heavens are backing them. Attila, however, silently gazes away, deeply analyzing the blind faith of this reformed bandit. Addressed respectfully as a former knight, he quickly corrects them he never held any noble title. Staring ahead, Attila firmly declares that the heavens are absolutely not playing favorites here. He merely reads the chaotic flow of war. Internally, he knows he must strictly follow the novel's plot without ruining the timeline, ensuring Charles safely discovers the fairy realm. But suddenly, an unnatural darkness falls, leaving Otto paralyzed by the terrifying shift. Attila snaps his head up, wondering if this is a catastrophic death omen. A blood-chilling eclipse slowly devours the sun. He stares at the impossible phenomenon, cold sweat dropping as he mutters, "Wait. I never wrote a scene like this." In the original web novel, Rashid urgently kneels, reporting that the Golden Lion mercenaries will split their massive army in two. Within exactly 5 days, Attila's eyes sharpen. Charles is finally making his grand move. Nodding calmly, he orders Rashid to maintain the flawless scouting. The Gasconian army was destined to join the war, but Blotto suffered a devastating defeat. Because of that, Gasconu's total military power became terrifyingly weak. If the timeline derails further, this war will tragically end. Long before Charles discovers the mythical fairy realm, Attila urgently calls out to Otto, who asks if he needs anything. Unwilling to, refusing to let his legend be twisted, he declares war on the Golden Lion mercenaries. Otto freezes in absolute disbelief, praying his ears deceived him. But Attila's gaze remains unyielding. The veteran warns that they command over 100 bloodthirsty soldiers. The young barbarian simply smirks. He already knows. Desperate, Otto grabs him, warning that their leader Charles is a terrifying monster matching his own strength. Unfazed, Attila coldly asks if Otto plans to back out now. Otto yields, vowing to fight. But as Attila commands him to prepare, Otto argues they need 10 days to stockpile armor, rations, and steel. Furthermore, their ragtag mercenaries lack proper combat training. Despite these glaring flaws, Attila demands they march right this second. Completely baffled, Otto questions this sudden madness. Smirking sharply, Attila declares that only he, Otto, and 3 former knights are striking tonight. 5 days later, a devastating bloodbath erupts across the southern front lines. Pippin and his vanguard stare in absolute horror at the unfolding carnage. He screams that military intelligence never predicted this ambush. Suddenly, scouts scream that the savage Black Wolf tribe has joined Gasconu, crushing their fallen comrades underfoot. Gritting his teeth, Pippin rallies his surviving troops to brace against the monstrous horde. A fierce barbarian leaps forward, brutally decapitating a frontline knight. The unstoppable beast continues, his rampage obliterating another helpless guard. By the battle's end, Pippin and his broken squad lie defeated in the dirt. Later, deep within the Golden Lion's command, Camp Commander Charles delivers chilling news. The legendary Black Wolf tribe has crashed the southern front. A terrified knight asks if those tribal monsters truly forged an alliance with Gasconu. Charles nods grimly, stating that their savage momentum is swallowing the continent whole. Yet the ambitious Charles views this deadly crisis as the ultimate stepping stone to legendary glory. He immediately reroutes the 1st Division's marching orders, commanding an instant deployment straight into the vanguard's fiery jaws. Veterans Pippin and Ruach snap to attention without hesitation. Pippin confirms the assault force is fully primed. Acknowledging his loyalty, Charles places the entire 2nd Division entirely in Pippin's hands. He pivots to his elite troops, roaring for the vanguard to march. Exchanging a final glance, Charles orders Pippin to survive. Pippin chuckles, refusing to jinx their guaranteed victory. Stepping forward, the mighty Ruach insists that babying Pippin is a waste. Charles sternly commands Ruach to guard his own life too, and the warrior pledges his absolute faith in their leader. Burning with ambition, Charles swears they will carve their names into this kingdom's history. Ignited by his fierce aura, Pippin and Ruach roar in unwavering unity. As the Elite Four vanish into the abyss, Pippin rallies, his remaining guards ordering a brutal hunt for the enemy commander's head. But just as they mobilize, a chilling shadow shifts in the tree line. Attila erupts from the darkness, diving toward 2 unsuspecting guards. Unleashing his deadly aura, he grins, declaring his prey has been cornered. Pippin wildly dashes to block Attila's devastating strike. Suddenly, memories flash back to the eclipse 5 days prior. Otto frantically asks if 5 mere warriors can truly conquer the legendary Golden Lion. Attila, radiating absolute confidence, simply orders him to shut up and arm himself. Running a whetstone down his gleaming blade, he reveals that flipping this brutal war's momentum requires shattering the Golden Lion's core military might. He smirks, declaring this is their sole window to strike, while the monstrous Charles is away, snapping to reality. Attila's explosive ambush crushes Pippin. The vice captain is violently launched backward by the sheer crushing impact. Attila mockingly warns him to stay down like a good dog. Instantly enraged, second unit knights swarm the battlefield. Concealed in the dense shadows, Otto's squad panics, desperate to launch a rescue, but Otto brutally halts them, warning that breaking formation now would incinerate their entire master plan. As the knights stare in total confusion, Otto grimly reveals their only mission is to spectate as Attila annihilates the enemy camp single-handedly. Meanwhile, Attila casually notes his initial strategy was merely a hit and run on Pippin. But facing this bloodthirsty mob, he realizes an easy exit is impossible. The enraged knights charge at him, smiling like a demon. Attila vaults into the sky, spinning his heavy weapon like a cyclone. In one fluid strike, he pulverizes several armored guards simultaneously. 3 vengeful knights furiously stab at his afterimage. Catching the blur of motion, Pippin screams a frantic warning about death raining from above, but Attila flips, channeling explosive aura, and smashes his weapon straight into the Earth's core. The catastrophic impact triggers a volcanic eruption of debris. A devastating shockwave obliterates the entire vanguard, trembling in the shadows. Otto whispers that this monster's flawless plan is unfolding perfectly. As the suffocating dust clears a haunting graveyard of shattered knights, litters the battlefield. Pippin collapses into the mud, his shattered sword lying uselessly nearby. Instantly, the massive Ruach shields him, desperate to block the blow. The vice-captain finally grasps the terrifying reality of their doom. Standing tall, the assault captain swears he will defend him. Honoring his blood oath to Charles Bleeding, Pippin cries out Ruach's name. The giant smiles, gently swearing to shield him like the precious family he has finally found. A bittersweet montage of golden memories with his sworn brothers, and Charles flashes before his mind. Family is a treasure worth shedding blood for. Raising his heavy shield, Ruach braces for the ultimate clash. He locks his burning gaze on the impending bloodbath. Declaring himself the ultimate vanguard, he challenges Attila. The monster praises his fiery spirit. Ruach glares, demanding if he is truly the legendary man of the massacre. The young barbarian smirks, admitting his bloody reputation is finally taking root. The vanguard roars his name, Ruach, captain of the assault unit. With absolute resolve, he vows to utterly crush him. Attila merely flashes a chilling smile. Ruach explodes forward with an earth-shattering roar. He launches into the sky, unleashing his ultimate strike. But Attila is faster, blurring into motion for a devastating counter. He crashes down like a meteor, striking Ruach head-on. The assault captain desperately attempts to brace his heavy shield against the starting those. Catastrophic impact. Pippin shrieks his fallen comrade's name. Ruach is blasted backward, completely broken. Attila turns coldly, stating that playtime is officially over. Pippin stares in pure terror at the man of the massacre. He compares this monster to Lord Charles. Yet he realizes this absolute beast is infinitely more terrifying. Pippin knows instantly that Attila will be a catastrophic threat to the Golden Lion. Desperate, he commands his troops to forge an impenetrable iron shield wall. The elite soldiers snap into a flawless formation. Around their leader, Attila chuckles, praising Pippin's tactical genius to command 100 warriors with a single breath. The troops' shattered morale instantly reignites like wildfire. The elite archers lock onto their target, drawing their deadly bows taut. Then Pippin roars for them to unleash hell. He commands the garrison to reinforce the iron barrier. The vanguard locks together, forging a defensive fortress of bristling spears and heavy shields. From afar, Otto's squad watches, sweating at the sheer lethality of that ironclad tactic. Could be Attila's eyes narrow instantly, identifying the legendary phalanx formation. It is an ancient strategy where warriors interlock their massive shields, marching as one unstoppable steel beast. Though basic, it creates an absolute fortress of simultaneous impenetrable defense. It also guarantees flawless, synchronized slaughter. It is the ultimate meat grinder against chaotic forces. Otto violently panics, screaming that the iron wall is charging. Hearing the terror, the young barbarian roars at his squad to hoist their shields high. A blue system window flashes, activating the support skill. Tactic detection. Attila bellows that a deadly arrow storm is incoming. The phalanx troops instantly hoist their heavy shields to the sky. The lethal shower violently crashes down against the iron formation. Completely repelled by the absolute defense, Attila glares at the impenetrable wall that effortlessly swallowed their strike. Otto is trembling, realizing the system's warning was absolute truth. Panic rises as he points at the massive, terrifyingly thick projectiles hurtling toward them. One brutal missile strikes the earth, detonating with catastrophic earth-shattering force. Shouldering his trembling men, Attila fiercely sprints through the dense woods, roaring at them to grip tight. He smirks, noting he already crippled the Golden Lion's vanguard and planned to vanish. But with that deadly sniper, fire escape is totally impossible. He suddenly commands his panicked squad to hit the dirt. They question him, fearing they are being used as bait. Attila scoffs at the thought, safely hurling them into the brush. Then he turns to face the army, declaring he will single-handedly crush them. Pippin shrieks his command, ordering a ruthless execution volley to bring him down. A massive wave of deadly steel eclipses the sky, but Attila recklessly charges straight into the lethal barrage. His squad watches in absolute horror, screaming about the incoming slaughter. The barbarian whirls his mighty axe, creating a hurricane that repels every strike. The arrows are brutally smashed and scattered to the wind. He pushes forward relentlessly, dancing through the deadly storm with terrifying grace. Pippin and the Rice elite guard watch this monstrous display in sheer disbelief. The vice captain trembles, wondering how one man parries 100 lethal strikes and keeps advancing. He shudders, questioning what kind of demonic beast stands before him. Attila simply flashes a bloodthirsty grin, leveling his weapon. With a thunderous roar, he hurls the spinning axe. The projectile screams through the wind, rocketing straight toward the phalanx. The weapon obliterates the first line of heavy shields. It shreds through elite soldiers and iron walls like fragile paper. Then the blood-soaked axe miraculously returns, spinning back to Attila. Bleeding Pippin staggers backward, clutching his ruined arm. He realizes their invincible formation perfected over so many agonizing years was obliterated by a single strike. The surviving troops gaze in horror at Attila, standing proudly in the distance. The broken vice-captain sends a silent, heartbroken apology to Lord Charles. Collapsing to his knees, he accepts his grim fate. Pippin drops his head, bracing for the executioner's blade. But shockingly, Attila casually laughs, calling it a truly entertaining battle. He simply turns and casually strolls away. Pippin stares at his retreating shadow, screaming in pure agonizing frustration. Sweating bullets, Otto gasps, swearing he really thought the Reaper had come for him. Recovering quickly, he whines that the boss must physically carry them from now on. Attila coldly asks what nonsense he is spewing. He mercilessly declares that their hellish training will restart from absolute scratch, completely shocking the lazy mercenary. Suddenly, a messenger falcon dives down, perching sharply on his muscular arm. With the bird settled, he unrolls a secret scroll. Recognizing Rashid's seal, Attila violently whips his horse around, abandoning his squad in the dust. Otto shouts, asking where he is heading. Ignoring him, he blasts through the dark woods at lightning speed. Elsewhere on the bloody battlefield, Charles' destiny approaches Chief Munzuk. An urgent dispatch demands immediate reinforcement at the Gain territory. While Charles closes in on the chieftain, Attila wrestles with confusion. Why is the Black Wolf clan fighting? He never penned this slaughter in his original web novel. A warm memory flashes, showing Munzuk proudly calling him his own flesh and blood. Remembering the chief's wish for his happiness, Attila roars, spurring his mount forward. He vows to rescue his father at any cost, praying he survives. Meanwhile, chaos engulfs the Black Wolf encampment. Crimson stains the shattered earth. The protagonist, Charles Einhard, marches toward a bleeding warrior. He coldly demands information, seeking an axe-wielding beast. Gasping for breath, the dying man fiercely denies knowing such a warrior. Charles scoffs at the wasted effort. Clutching his bloodied blade, the fallen fighter begs for mercy. Charles smirks, mocking the pathetic plea. He proudly proclaims these savages are Aquitaine's sworn foes. His loyal knights roar in agreement. Charles condemns their cowardly ambush that slaughtered his brothers. The troops howl for vengeance. Raising his sword, Charles vows to eradicate every last savage. Suddenly, a booming voice commands him to halt. Charles pivots, sneering that he never expected the prey to willingly surrender. Chief Munzuk steps from the shadows. The legendary marshal, God, readies his stance. Charles calculates the situation, knowing raw power strikes demand heavy wind-ups. He plans a lethal counter. The second Munzuk lifts his weapon, but the veteran chieftain launches instantly, blasting Charles away. Munzuk relentlessly presses the assault. The knight barely raises his blade, terrified by this monstrous speed. Munzuk mocks his rookie stance for absorbing side impacts before driving a devastating fist forward. The brutal kinetic force shatters against Charles's ribs, launching him across the battlefield. Munzuk mercilessly swings his heavy axe. He silently praises the kid for surviving 2 lethal strikes. Crashing down, Charles channels blazing aura. Sensing the knight's trembling stance, Munzuk fiercely lunges for the kill. The hero stares down absolute death. Munzuk calls out his lack of battle scars, bringing the executioner's blade crashing downward. Suddenly, piercing magical projectiles erupt at blinding velocity. Charles unleashes a hidden strike upon the veteran. Vicious magic tears through the chieftain's flesh, yet like a mountain he refuses to fall, gasping in pure shock. Munzuk glares at his mangled chest. Seizing the opening, Charles readies his holy sword for round 2. Brilliant level-up screens cascade around the hero. Smirking, Charles proclaims that every clash only makes him infinitely stronger. Charles locks eyes with the beast. The Black Wolf chief chuckles, feeling the knight's oppressive aura dangerously skyrocketing. Grinning at this thrilling, deadly dance, he lifts his massive axe, promising an entertaining death. Charles hyper-focuses on the beast's muscles. Munzuk obliterates the earth with absolute, destructive might. The explosive shockwave hurls Charles backward. He instantly recognizes the legendary vacuum blade art. Munzuk follows up with a catastrophic horizontal slash. Charles leaps, dodging by a mere hair's breadth. The chieftain praises his insane reflexes, but unleashes hell immediately. A terrifying 3-stage combo strike descends upon the overwhelmed protagonist. The impact pulverizes the very terrain itself. Munzuk gasps, shocked that anyone besides Awashi could survive that onslaught. As the smoke clears, a colossal blade gleams. Charles stands completely unbothered, gripping his steel tightly. The warlord stares in disbelief at the flawless defense. Flashing an arrogant grin, Charles declares, "The warm-up is over." Igniting his aura for retribution, he hoists his grand sword high, bringing down a catastrophic finishing blow. The holy energy strikes Munzuk flawlessly. Charles stands victorious while the Titan finally crashes into the dirt. Announcing his total victory, Charles fiercely interrogates him about the butcher's location. The fallen leader simply chuckles darkly. Frustrated by the maniacal laughter, Charles glares. Bleeding out, Munzuk grins and points directly behind the hero. Charles spins around to face the new threat. Attila Meteor strikes the battlefield, declaring he made it just in time. He violently commands the knight to step away from his father. Charles instantly identifies the infamous butcher. Attila charges, threatening to rip him apart if he doesn't move. Unfazed, Charles arrogantly dares him to try. Two legendary weapons collide in a split-second blur. Both titans lock blades in a terrifying test of pure monstrous strength. The explosive friction unleashes a devastating sonic boom. The protagonist's holy blade slowly overpowers Attila's heavy axe. Without warning, a splitting migraine strikes Attila's mind. A blazing blue system window materializes, blaring a critical alert. The main protagonist, Charles Einhard, has been engaged. Immediately, the system forcefully triggers the emergency author protection protocol. Attila. He freezes as the system suddenly awakens. Instantly, a hidden authority known as the Mind's Eye breaks its seal. A blue holographic window flashes, declaring the author's protection program is now online. Simultaneously, the newly awakened Mind's Eye pulses with ancient power. Attila questions the true nature of this strange ability, but before he can even process it, Charles ruthlessly charges forward. Attila snaps back to reality, knowing one distraction means absolute death. The Golden Knight thrusts his blade straight toward his shoulder. Caught off guard by the blinding speed, Attila miraculously evades the lethal strike by a mere hair's breadth. The proud knight freezes in pure disbelief. A confident smirk crosses Attila's face, quietly admiring this terrifying new perception. This absolute clarity is the Mind's Eye at work. Suddenly, a glowing notification reveals Charles's combat level at 500. Attila's eyes widen, realizing this stat is 100 points beyond his original lore. In a flash, the aura violently spikes to 503. Watching his enemy's endless growth, Attila urgently braces himself for a catastrophic clash. Meanwhile, another golden screen confirms Attila's own strength stands at 800. Measuring the gap, he knows dragging this battle out will spell disaster. Refusing to wait, Charles Einhard erupts forward like a blazing meteor. The fierce warrior aims to shatter his defenses completely. Shocked by the devastating velocity, Attila barely deflects the heavy impact, sensing the blade accelerating with every single swing. Determined to disarm his creator, Charles unleashes a merciless strike directly against Attila's mighty axe. A chilling realization hits him. The enemy predicts his every thought. The relentless knight pushes the overwhelming assault with terrifying precision. Cold steel brutally slices across Attila's flesh. Snapping back into stance, he boldly declares, "This war is far from finished." His piercing gaze locks onto a microscopic blind spot. Explosive counterattack, completely shattering Charles's rhythm. Attila fearlessly catches the deadly weapon barehanded and viciously locks onto his enemy's wrist. With a bone-crushing twist, he forcefully hurls the legendary hero over his shoulder like a rag doll. Gearing up for the ultimate execution, Attila drives a devastating, thunderous kick straight into the golden armor. The shockwave rattles the earth. Touching down, he coldly announces his victory as crimson droplets stain the battlefield. Yet, against all odds, the bleeding warrior rises again, his fighting spirit blazing fiercely. Attila tenses up, utterly stunned by this monstrous endurance. The system screams a warning. Charles's power has mutated to 800. In seconds, it shatters 810. The terrifying numbers are skyrocketing infinitely. A catastrophic awakening is unfolding. An ecstatic grin stretches across Attila's face, deeply respecting the absolute monster he personally wrote into existence. Gripping his sword, Charles Einhard marches forward like a god of war. His suffocating aura crushes the surrounding air. Attila narrows his eyes, acknowledging this fated rival's unmatched potential. Every time they clash steel, and every time Attila dances past death, the hero's immense energy wildly erupts further, flashing a fearless smirk. The creator finally unleashes his full power. He rockets into the sky for a fatal plunge. Suddenly, a blinding slash rips brutally across his chest. Coughing blood, his iron will refuses to break, vowing absolute victory. Charles fiercely roars his destiny to conquer the throne of the Supreme King. He blasts forward with an apocalyptic strike. The holy blade violently cleaves through Attila's defenses, tearing flesh and bone. The catastrophic shockwave completely obliterates the entire battlefield into ruins. Amidst the destruction, Charles coldly watches the fall. Thick dust fade. Paralyzed on the shattered earth, Munich witnesses the nightmare in pure horror. Suddenly, an ominous aura forces Charles to snap around. A tyrannical blast of energy brutally repels him. Disbelief fills his eyes. His enemy still breathes, like an immortal demon. Attila resurrects from the absolute wreckage. A terrifying, unbreakable smile forms as he glares at the hero. With locked gazes, the creator whispers, a dark promise of doom. Charles's survival instincts violently scream. Exploding with power, Attila pulverizes the bedrock, kicking up a massive smokescreen of sharp debris. Blinded by the sudden chaos, Charles desperately scans the area. Instantly, Attila launches a discarded broadsword right at the hero's feet, detonating a catastrophic blast upon impact. Choking on the thick ash, the frantic knight curses his completely ruined vision. Like a phantom, Attila materializes dead in his blind spot. Reacting purely on instinct, Charles furiously whips around to block, but a titanic, double-fisted hammer strike mercilessly crushes down. The devastating blow caves into Charles's armored chest, chaining the combo with a savage hook. Attila commands the Golden Boy to finally embrace the darkness. Pushed to the brink, Charles miraculously contorts his body to survive. Fluidly, shifting his weight, he violently yanks a buried blade from the shattered earth. He flawlessly deflects the lethal punch. Attila gasps, completely shocked by the impossible parry. Flashing a bloodthirsty grin, Charles mocks his opponent's slow realization. A blinding system alert screams that his lethal power just broke 900, and the terrifying gauge is still mutating. Charles erupts into a furious thrust, but Attila desperately crosses his raw forearms to absorb the steel. The divine energy violently spikes to 901. A devastating shockwave ruthlessly blasts Attila backward across the ruins. The nightmare counter ticks up to 902. Instantly, they collide in an apocalyptic symphony of hyperspeed strikes. The protagonist's boundless strength shatters all known limits. Roaring with furious bloodlust, the Golden Knight lunges for the kill, violently blasting Attila into oblivion by the devastating onslaught. Yet he grips his fist, refusing to yield. Attila charges forward, launching a catastrophic strike, determined to finish this battle. His knuckles smash directly against the steel of Charles's blade. The overwhelming impact fractures the bursa weapon. With a beastly roar, Attila unleashes his absolute power. The sheer force annihilates the sword, launching Charles backward. The tremendous shockwave paralyzes the entire battlefield. Charles Einhard crashes into the dirt, his fighting spirit utterly crushed. Attila stands tall, his breath heavy with legendary victory. A dead silence swallows the war zone. He hurries toward Munich, anxiously checking on his father. Munich brushes off the concern with a proud nod. Attila pulls him up, earning a weary smile of gratitude. The tribe's chieftain marvels at his son's monstrous growth during their brief separation. Confused by this heavy praise, Attila tilts his head. Munich reveals that a demonic madness burned in his eyes mid-battle. It was the terrifying gaze of an apex predator dominating the battlefield. Proudly, he notes that his son absolutely hasn't slacked on his hellish training. Attila blinks, questioning what brutal training he meant. Then a sudden realization strikes him, leaving Monzuk puzzled by his silence. As they turn away, Charles rasps out, "Butcher, wait." Attila glares back at the fallen knight. Charles demands an honorable death, declaring that pathetic mercy is completely meaningless now. He asks if the butcher will only keep ascending to godlike heights. With fiery resolve, he challenges him to grow, infinitely stronger, promising a future rematch. Far away Bae watches the magical projection, baffled by Attila's monstrous aura. She wonders if he serves a legendary war deity like Ares or Tyr. Suddenly, a mysterious man steps from the shadows, mocking her intense fascination. The witch narrows her eyes at Reborn. The dark mage swirls his glass, declaring Attila a fascinating anomaly of war. Reborn offers her a smubachi cocktail, praising its intoxicating aroma and sharp, salty bite. He whispers that the bloody, lethal poison dancing on his tongue is delightfully thrilling. Batri Elizabeth scoffs at Lieber, noting that his morbid curiosity is endless. She sharply questions if he's meddling too deep in mortal fate. Reveru smirks, claiming that merely observing from the shadows is agonizingly dull. He craves the soaring freedom of a bird, and even the pathetic existence of a mortal failure. Darkly, he whispers his twisted desire to experience life as a fragile insect. Botri praises his sinister hunger for knowledge, but issues a chilling warning. Do not get too obsessed with playing God, catching bugs like a foolish child, only to accidentally crush the fragile plaything in your own palm. Raibaru flashes a wicked smile, acknowledging the threat. Then he laughs it off as a dark joke. Meanwhile, victorious roars shake the earth. The butcher has conquered the Lion King. The mighty Kiri mercenaries have crushed the Golden Lion faction. Wild rumors of the invincible Lion King falling to a mere butcher spread like wildfire. Riding this momentum, the Kiri mercenaries ferociously push forward, shifting the tides of war completely toward Gascon. Yet with both armies bled dry, an unexpected truce is suddenly forged. A stunned mercenary gasps, unable to process their royal invitation to the Duke's grand estate. Calling this miraculous turn a literal dream, he cheers wildly, boasting about their incoming glory and rapid climb up the noble ranks. Attila chuckles, admitting this royal treatment beats being hunted down like filthy street rats. Flustered, the man argues that crossing lines was pure survival instinct without other options. Unconvinced Attila playfully raises an eyebrow, questioning if they were truly that innocent. Pouting, the mercenary whines about their ruthless boss lacking any basic empathy. Then he eyes the tiny fluffball, asking if the little bear agrees. Attila swiftly interrupts, defending his companion's honor. He's no mere bear. The mercenary sweats, begging them to finally give the mysterious creature a proper name. Attila glances at the tiny beast resting on his shoulder, deep in thought. Leaning in, he softly asks if it desires a grand title. The mystical white furball frantically shakes its head in panic. No way. Regardless, Attila insists on a fierce, warrior-worthy title. Grinning widely, he asks, "How about the name?" Punch. The tiny beast's eyes sparkle with absolute joy, immediately hugging him tight. Attila blinks, totally shocked. It worked. Ping. A glowing system window materializes, locking in the name, Punch, leaving Attila utterly bewildered. The divine system then registers. Punch as a rare, illusory beast hidden experience. Points instantly tally up. Suddenly, Punch starts rapidly leveling up in an unstoppable streak. Attila stares at the blue holographic screen, blown away that a combat power of 50 is so massive. Soon, after a new feature unlocks the elusive monster inventory, he scratches his head, deeply curious about this strange magical storage. At that exact split second, a lethal throwing knife slices the air, triggering his survival instincts. A fellow mercenary screams, utterly terrified by the deadly ambush from the shadows. Pure chaos erupts among the confused troops. Attila fiercely yanks his horse's reins and roars a desperate warning. In a flash, he draws his steel, immediately locking eyes onto the strange throne. Dagger. A shadow assassin's blade. A deadly specialized weapon meant for silent slaughter. Attila's blood runs cold as he realizes who is the mastermind behind the ambush. A fierce woman clad in tactical gear steps from the shadows, declaring herself as Caspi Aiden. Otto instantly falls for her striking beauty, but a brutal smack from Attila snaps him out of his dangerous trance. The punishing blow sends Otto tumbling off his mount into the dirt. Scrambling back to his feet, he shamelessly begs to be treated. Gently confessing his own foolishness, Caspi scoffs, mocking their legendary mercenary status, and loudly ridiculing their pathetic, weak display. She boldly dares them to prove their worth, immediately activating a hidden mechanism that shoots blazing crimson projectiles upward. The mysterious explosives rain down around Attila's squad. A deafening blast shatters the earth, instantly plunging their majestic war horses into store. Sheer panic. The terrified beasts rear up wildly, violently hurling the seasoned mercenaries out of their saddles and into the dirt. "What kind of dark magic is this?" one screams. "Hold your ground," Attila roars. "They are merely cheap enemy fireworks." His shaken men stare in disbelief, testing Attila's fading patience. Smirking wickedly, Caspi promises that the real nightmare has just begun. In a flash of lethal speed, the elite assassin completely vanishes into thin air. Even Attila's sharp eyes widen, completely shocked to see her entirely gone. His senses flare, realizing they have walked into a deadly forest ambush, groaning at the tiresome bloodbath ahead. Suddenly, a hidden snare yanks one of his soldiers down. Attila whips around his combat instincts, screaming of a fatal attack. Massive wooden spikes plunge from the canopy. The trapped soldier shrieks, facing the terrifying reality of Caspi's absolute trap mastery. Moving like lightning, Attila violently tackles his comrade out of the impact zone, roaring that hesitation will leave him crushed alive. However, Attila's boot sinks into a demonic alchemical sludge. The cursed gooey trap binds the unstoppable warrior perfectly and completely in place. The giant stakes violently slam into the earth, scattering his remaining troops. "You cunning witch," Attila roars, his powerful aura flaring. He instantly unleashes tactical detection, exposing a horrifying labyrinth of deadly snares. He quickly senses a number of hidden traps as if engineered by malicious fate. Suddenly, a lethal shadow darts swiftly between the ancient trees. The ghost-like assassin smirks, drinking in her flawless victory. Yet Attila straightens up his blazing eyes, vowing to never be bound. Like that again. With explosive force, he launches himself straight into the sky, ready to shatter heaven and earth to crush her. Caspi freezes in absolute horror at his monstrous physical prowess. Watching him scale the giant trees like a beast, a chilling realization strikes. Is he even human? She gasps. Attila sprints across the fragile canopy with gravity-defying speed. He spots her during his final move and confirms the danger zone is clear. Spotting her trembling figure on a higher branch, Attila charges forward like a relentless, unstoppable force. He prepares a devastating strike to end the hunt. Panicking Caspi unleashes a flurry of metallic chains, desperately screaming at him to stay back. Attila effortlessly weaves through the deadly barrage with absolute calm, but suddenly, a sinister smirk returns to Caspi's face. It was a trap. Attila forcefully leaps backward as hidden chains explode from the branches below. He instantly recognizes her true weapon, a wickedly sharp chained blade. His piercing gaze tracks the incoming steel strike. In a dizzying flash, the cursed chains wrap tight completely and hopelessly paralyzing him. "Do not bother struggling," Caspi sneers triumphantly. "Those links are forged from legendary dwarven steel. Fight it, and you will lose your arms." Yet a terrifying, cocky grin spreads across Attila's face. "That is exactly why you should run," he whispers, beginning to shatter the indestructible chains with a deafening roar. The tables turn instantly as Caspi screeches, in disbelief suddenly captured and hanging from a tree. Furiously demanding her freedom, unfazed Attila coldly interrogates her, demanding the true name of her shadowy employer. She flatly refuses, stating that an assassin never betrays their client. Left with zero options, Attila unleashes his ultimate psychic power, the legendary Mind's Eye. The assassin's mind screams in terror, cursing the traitor Roland for hiding this monster's true strength. From this, Attila immediately deduces that Roland is the traitor pulling the strings. The fragile political illusion of peace between Aquitaine and Gascony is finally shattered. On the surface, the public believed both grand armies were simply exhausted. However, a much darker, bloody war for royal succession was boiling in Gascony. It makes his blood boil to see cowardly nobles murdering their own allied mercenaries, acting just like the tragic original timeline. With a calculating smirk, Attila vows to personally manipulate fate and crown Saxon as the true successor. Attila commands his battle-hardened squad to march. "Where do you think you are going?" Caspi yells. A smirking soldier waves goodbye, calling her Little Kitty, while an ominous crow watches from the darkness. Soon, Attila's formidable mercenary company stands before the breathtaking gates of Duke Gascon's mansion. The sheer opulence leaves his men speechless, drooling over the undeniable wealth of the Gascony bloodline. Focus on the mission, Attila commands. Stepping inside feels like entering a palace of the gods. The overwhelming extravagance and towering architecture leave the seasoned warriors awestruck. Everyone marvels at the lavish feasts and pristine golden decor. Otto eagerly begs to devour the magnificent banquet, but a glaring Attila orders him to control his hunger. Suddenly, an elegant figure glides forward, greeting the rugged warriors with a warm smile. Attila and Otto turn. In complete shock, the mysterious host gracefully bows, revealing himself as none other than Saxon Gascony. The brilliant second prince, Otto, instantly recognizes their wealthy benefactor, bowing his head in profound gratitude. Saxon graciously thanks the legendary Kiri mercenaries, praising them for saving countless soldiers from the jaws of death. While the men brush it off, Otto eagerly offers to narrate their epic battlefield tales. Suddenly, a shadow falls over them, recognizing the Kiri corps. It is none other than Roland, Gascony, the arrogant firstborn of the noble house. Zaxxon immediately addresses his older brother, but Roland just sneers, spitting that he cannot fathom how filthy bandit trash dared to step foot in this grand hall. Glaring daggers, he threatens that he will show absolutely zero mercy if these mutts dare to cross him. Instantly, the estate guards drop into battle formation. Utterly baffled, Otto turns and asks if they committed some grave sin. He nervously wonders if eating earlier offended them, and Attila just shrugs. However, Attila's eyes sharpen, marking Roland as the true mastermind behind the shadow assassination plot. He internally smirks, noting that just like in the original web novel, Roland remains a thoroughly arrogant and prideful fool. Zaxxon swiftly steps in, demanding if this blatant disrespect is how they treat the celebrated war heroes. Roland violently snaps at his younger brother to shut his mouth, demanding respect, and accusing Zaxxon of already acting like the ruling successor. Coldly, Zaxxon fires back that Roland is the one disgracing their family name. The furious elder brother simply scoffs in disgust and storms off. Zaxxon turns toward the battle-hardened mercenaries, deeply bowing to apologize for the shameful display. Taking his leave, he urges them to enjoy the grand banquet without a single worry. Otto softly whispers about the toxic noble blood feud, but Attila grimly asks how anyone could swallow food with this suffocating tension. Suddenly, Duke Gascony's voice booms, ordering everyone to raise their glasses. The Supreme Patriarch toasts to the endlessly glorious future awaiting their noble house. The mercenaries raise their cups in unison, and a cheerful Otto marvels at the premium vintage wine. But as Attila takes a tiny sip, an ominous chill runs down his spine. Without warning Duke Gascony violently hurls up dark, crimson blood. He crashes heavily to the marble floor, while terrified nobles scream for his grace. Suddenly, the Patriarch chokes on a horrifying fountain of blood, desperately clawing at his own throat. He collapses completely on the cold floor, as everyone hysterically screams his noble title. Absolute despair shatters the room as his son desperately dives forward, roaring for his dying father, sprinting to help a man frantically kneels to check the Patriarch's fading pulse. His face draining of all color, he screams in absolute terror that the Duke has perished. Upon processing this catastrophic news, the grand banquet hall erupts into sheer panic. Lingering just a few steps away, a mysterious youth silently observes the entire bloody tragedy with ice-cold eyes. Violently spinning toward the youth, Roland thrusts a trembling finger at him, branding him the sole mastermind behind this royal treason. His roaring voice shakes the hall, accusing Zaxxon of mercilessly assassinating their father. Completely blindsided by the deadly trap, Zaxxon denies the wicked accusation, swearing his absolute innocence. But the damage is done. The estate's elite guards instantly draw their steel and tightly encircle the young lord. Boiling with absolute rage, Zaxxon roars, demanding Roland explain this vile treachery. Gesturing wildly to his heavily armed knights, Roland viciously accuses him of smuggling filthy cutthroats into the sacred estate. Shattering the lie, Zaxxon fires back that he sees right through this demonic scheme, and this is no time to entertain petty squabbles. But Roland doubles down, howling that his brother is a lying snake who slaughtered their father to steal the throne. Pointing at his mercenary allies, Roland shrieks that Zaxxon used these dogs for his bloody coup. Swallowed by the escalating chaos, the trembling aristocrats watch the nightmare with sheer terror in their eyes. Maintaining absolute calm, Zaxxon stares down his accuser, realizing physical force is his only remaining card. Roland mercilessly declares that the penalty for this failed shadow assassination is instant execution. Sweeping his cold gaze over the lethal knights, Zaxxon sharply calculates that his enemy is far stronger than the original novel described. Completely trapped in a deadly ring of steel, the cornered mercenaries stare down a forest of lethal spears. His battle-hardened warriors instantly flare their auras, ready for a bloodbath. But Zaxxon screams with absolute authority, strictly ordering his comrades not to interfere under any circumstances. He desperately warns that striking first will completely erase any chance of proving their innocence. Scrambling for a survival route, he forcefully activates his cosmic skill, the Mind's Eye. But in that exact second, a glaring system window violently flashes before his vision with an absolute critical error. The glowing digital text chillingly warns that this divine ability is utterly useless against an unknown identity. He freezes, completely mind-blown, questioning how a noble could possess an unknown status. Piercing his gaze into his smirking brother, a horrifying thought strikes him. Is that even Roland? Then he furiously grinds his teeth, calculating the terrifying odds of a shape-shifting demonic assassin taking his brother's skin. Quickly shattering that disguise theory, he realizes the unique bloodline scent would have exposed an impostor. Aiming a merciless finger, Roland coldly commands his elite knights to slaughter them all. The soldiers instantly surge forward, their deadly silver spears, thirsting for absolute carnage. Howling in pure, life-or-death desperation, a frantic mercenary demands to know what their final survival tactic should be. Moving faster than lightning, Zaxxon snatches a heavy gold ornament from the banquet table. Witnessing this bizarre, unexpected action, Roland merely scoffs with a totally bewildered expression. Condensing explosive aura into his arm, Zaxxon viciously launches the heavy golden projectile directly toward his brother. The terrified guards dive for cover as the golden meteor shatters the air. The unstoppable projectile cleanly strikes Roland's chest, brutally tearing completely through his noble body, blasting a terrifying gaping hole. The devastating aura-infused strike cleanly punches straight through his absolute center. Utterly paralyzed by shock, the hardened mercenaries scream in absolute mind-bending disbelief at the gruesome spectacle. The entire aristocratic hall instantly descends into apocalyptic panic as the knight captain furiously roars for Zaxxon's immediate bloody capture. Drowning in cold sweat, his loyal subordinate desperately cries out to him, shouting, "Chief!" But suddenly a terrifying, unreadable demonic energy suffocates the entire room. Despite having a fatal chest-gaping wound, Roland merely twists into a nightmarish smile, whispering that this defies human limits. While his chest wound instantly heals, spectral chains manifest around his body. Dumbfounded, his warriors scream in pure terror. They cannot comprehend this dark sorcery. Grasping the grim reality, he knows it is definitely ancient magic. Without warning, the Grand Hall's debris violently levitates into the storm. Forced backward, he spots a mysterious feather, drifting gracefully within the tempest. It hovers unnervingly in the dead center, completely untouched by the massive blast. Elsewhere, an elegant hand slowly swirls a crimson wineglass. This man is the legendary monarch of Delbel Terrace, watching the slaughter unfold. Smirking wickedly, he whispers that the bloody spectacle is getting intensely entertaining. Meanwhile, at the estate, a blazing emergency quest window erupts before our main character. He glares at the glowing blue text, completely stunned by the impossible demand. The system orders him to slay the dreaded Crow Monarch for epic loot. Suddenly, from the heavens, a catastrophic strike obliterates the towering roof with absolute fury. Desperately bracing against the crushing shockwave, the warriors barely survive the tremors. Rising from the dust, a sinister mage manifests, radiating an overwhelming aura of dread. Legends dictate that these dark mages possess a divine strength, utterly unfathomable to mortals. They stand as an absolute existence, completely eclipsing fragile humanity. Unleashing his dark mana, he bombards the entire vanguard with ruthless devastation. Sprinting through the war zone, a frantic youth screams in sheer horror at the nightmare unfolding before him. It is like a majestic eagle slaughtering worthless ants. The warlock's relentless barrage rains down, obliterating dozens of soldiers who writhe in pure agony. Truly, it is an impossible fate for mere mortals to vanquish an awakened mage. From afar, the survivors stare in horror at the mountain of corpses. But amidst the bloody carnage, a trembling hand reaches up with a sickening groan. Suddenly, the revived corpse snaps its neck back and violently roars. Aiming a decaying finger, a panicked ally shrieks at the monstrous abomination. Instantly, countless slaughtered bodies violently jerk awake, drag their broken limbs forward. Watching the undead swarm, he curses their catastrophic doom. In that breath, crimson-scarfed warrior roars that a bloodbath is imminent. Commanded by the wicked mage, the zombified puppets stampede like starving beasts. Swarmed by the feral undead, a soldier desperately begs for heavy, magical bear harriers scrambling to halt the onslaught. The elite sellswords lock their heavy steel shields. Seizing this split-second opening, our hero decapitates a possessed corpse with a blinding flash of steel. Following through, he anchors his heavy boots deep into the earth, blazing with battle intent. The brutal war explodes as the vanguard collides with the undead tide. Watching the included endless swarm, he charges a devastating heavy strike. He grits his teeth in despair, realizing he cannot slaughter his brainwashed comrades through gritted teeth. A bloodied veteran warns the commander. The defensive line is crumbling. Out of precious seconds, he resolves to hunt down Labelle single-handedly. Gazing down from his throne, the warlock sneers and elegantly flicks his wrist. In a flash, lethal mana gathers directly beneath his boots. Instantly, complex crimson runic arrays illuminate the dark soil, ensnaring the trapped mercenary brigade. Without a single warning, the explosive runes detonate with apocalyptic hellfire. Completely blindsided, he screams, while desperately guarding against the scorching inferno. The horrific truth dawns. It is a lethal combo of undead strikes paired with long-range destruction. Showing zero mercy, the ruthless mage channels yet another catastrophic spell. To wipe them out. Struck dead center, our hero is violently launched backward, unable to retaliate. Nearby, a broken comrade is crushed and shrieks for salvation. Witnessing his loyal brother's fall, his mind races for any desperate strategy. Casually enjoying the massacre, the arrogant wizard sighs with absolute supremacy. He coldly mocks them, claiming this pathetic struggle is boring him to tears. Gathering apocalyptic energy, he decrees it is time to erase them entirely. Witnessing the sky warp with raw mana, a veteran wails in soul-crushing dread. A colossal magic formation eclipses the heavens, sparking sheer panic. He can only gaze helplessly at doomsday weapon charging overhead, paralyzed by awe. This is the absolute terrifying realm of an awakened mage. In that desperate second, the legendary Muhul blade is his only salvation. Trembling with anxiety, his tiny spiritual companion lets out a frantic squeak. He commands his loyal familiar punch to retreat into the soul dimension for safety. Instantly, a glowing holographic window materializes, directly in his vision. Acknowledging the master's will, the mystical beast unlocks its spatial void. With eyes burning, summons punch's hidden power, readying for a deathmatch. Legends state this divine familiar holds a pocket dimension capable of hoarding mythical artifacts. Accessing the void space, he fiercely demands his godly blade, Mu Yul. The magical pet unhinges, its jaws impossibly wide to eject the weapon. But wait, it gags violently, sparking immediate panic in our hero. Then with zero grace, it aggressively coughs up the glowing relic. In a flash of steel, he tightly grips the hilt of his divine sword, Mu Yul. Witnessing this utterly absurd spectacle, the battle-hardened veterans freeze in sheer bewilderment. High above, the sinister warlock merely grins and questions what that pathetic display was. Gripping his weapon, he orders the arrogant sorcerer to shut his mouth. He issues a chilling warning that those mocking laughs will soon end. Without wasting a breath, he explodes forward, charging his enemy at breakneck speed. The sorcerer merely smirks at the fierce assault, praising the sheer effort. Raising one hand high, dark energy immediately begins to gather at his fingertips. Brimming with arrogance, he promises to demonstrate the vast gap in their realms of power. From above, a colossal tidal wave of magical force crashes toward the battlefield. Sensing the impending doom, a desperate mercenary screams out a warning that annihilation is imminent. The lethal aura surges violently, threatening to devour everyone in the hall. Vaulting smoothly over the writhing shadows, the warrior sets up an explosive aerial strike. Gripping his blade with unwavering resolve, he channels his soul into a devastating vertical slash, cleaving the overwhelming magical sphere clean in two. The sheer shockwave sends the battered mercenaries flying across the room. Witnessing his ultimate spell instantly shattered, the mage glares daggers at the fierce swordsman. Knocked off balance, the hero fights desperately to ground his stance. He proudly declares that this is no mere mortal blade, for it carries the absolute blessing of the gods. He exposes his weapon's true identity as a legendary anti-magic artifact. Reignited by this miraculous shift in fate, the mercenaries roar their leader's name. The stunned caster questions how a mortal lacking mana could shatter his divine arts. He marvels at the terrifying physical prowess of the Eastern bloodline. A sinister grin twists the sorcerer's face as he claims this battle is finally entertaining. Whispering a dark incantation, he readies a new spell, daring his foe to survive it. Burning with battle spirit, the swordsman commands his loyal companion to push the front line together. The wicked mage unleashes a relentless barrage of homing energy orbs. The hero desperately weaves his anti-magic blade, somehow managing to deflect the lethal onslaught. Thoroughly entertained, the spellcaster sadistically applauds the warrior's insane reflexes. Even while shredding through the dark aura, the hero roars in searing pain as the infinite bombardment continues. Someone cries out that to end this nightmare, the core spell circle must be shattered. Scanning the chaotic battlefield, he finds absolutely no runic formation. Deeply confused, he questions how high-tier magic functions without a massive array. Floating above, the mocking mage asks what he is searching for, hinting it is hidden in plain sight. Locking eyes with the enemy, the warrior finally understands. Instantly, he leaps with explosive force toward the airborne enemy. Roaring a mighty battle cry, he furiously hurls his heavy blade like a shooting star. Surprised, the mage wonders if the desperate fool threw away his only weapon. But soaring through the air, the blade aims strictly for the giant chandelier on the dock high ceiling. Realizing the true target, the sorcerer's smug expression violently twists into sheer terror. Striking with flawless precision, the heavy sword obliterates the glowing fixture. Crashing down from the roof, it flawlessly pierces the invisible magic array concealed above. Upon impacting the ground, the shattered sword triggers a massive explosion of raw mana. Desperate, the ruined mage screams, asking what happened to his perfect magic. Core, he screeches in pure agony that his mana flow is blocked. But instantly shifting his twisted demeanor, he grins, claiming it was merely a light-hearted joke. Empty-handed but fearless, the fierce swordsman relentlessly charges the dark sorcerer. The mage gloats that he can instantly manifest a miniature spell array anywhere. Firing a swift counter, he cruelly mocks that this basic magic is enough for an unarmed rat. Anticipating the deadly strike, the hero roars, forcefully activating his spatial beast inventory. Stretching out his hand, he desperately calls forth his loyal weapon. But instead of the blade, the summoned creature viciously clamps its jaws onto his arm. Left entirely without options, he hurls the biting beast straight into the terrified mage's face. Deeply panicked, the flustered caster shrieks at him to stop this insanity. Roaring, a promise of death, the warrior explodes forward, risking his life on this final charge. Closing the impossible gap, he unleashes a heaven-shaking punch directly on the arrogant villain's jaw. Struck by the ultimate blow, the sorcerer's physical form instantly dissolves into nothingness. The pure kinetic shockwave of the strike rips right through the illusion, obliterating the massive stone wall behind them. Reality sets in as he realizes his fist felt absolutely zero impact when the crushing blow connected. Thoroughly bewildered, he freezes, struggling to comprehend this bizarre phantom phenomenon. A second later, ominous black, raven feathers drift silently down from the shadows above. Snapping his gaze upward, he catches the coward, fleeing mockingly, wishing him a pathetic farewell. Fury igniting his soul, he curses the absolute bastard, demanding he stand his ground. Gliding high above the fleeing crow, laughs that it was truly entertaining clashing with Attila. The mockingbird cackles, finding it utterly hilarious that a mage was bested by a human. But suddenly, an unseen force violently strikes the bird mid-flight. With his hand outstretched, the unyielding swordsman coldly vows escape is impossible. On the blood-stained ground, the raven is brutally skewered by a phantom spear forged from thin air. The divine weapon immediately begins corroding the dark caster's body with its overwhelming holy light. Witnessing this absolute judgment, he is left completely speechless by the miraculous intervention. Burning away, the wretched crow shrieks in pure, unadulterated torment. Slowly turning to ash, the once arrogant mage finally grasps that his twisted game of fate has turned into a catastrophic ruin. Fading into oblivion, he wails in terror, cursing the heavenly relic that struck him down. Before the hero's eyes, the villain's body completely vanishes into nothingness. Panting heavily from the grueling fight, he wonders if he has finally secured victory. With the mage vanquished, the controlled soldiers stand motionless. Breaking free from the cursed haze, their minds slowly awaken, weakly asking, the chaos finally settled. One mercenary roared out that the cursed soldiers had regained their senses. Erupting into wild cheers, the entire squad of battle-hardened mercenaries screamed their hard-fought victory to the heavens. Moments later, a frantic comrade dashed toward the boss, desperate to speak. Closing the distance, he whined about the boss, hiding that legendary sword's true power. Snapping back, the fearless leader scoffed that the coward should have backed him up in combat instead. The lackey muttered a weak excuse, and the boss agreed that monster was no joke. Glancing downward, the underling's voice cracked with sudden dread. His face drained of color as he pointed a trembling finger, screaming that his invincible leader was soaked in blood, pushed past his absolute limit. The boss's vision blurred as his heavy body plummeted toward the earth. Watching his commander crumble, the loyal mercenary shrieked his name in soul-crushing despair. The shadows shifted to a hidden realm where the sinister sorcerer materialized, chuckling that the deadly clash was pure entertainment. Turning to a mysterious woman, he smirked, claiming he would be resting in pieces if Batory had not intervened. Weaving dark mystical arts over him, she coldly countered that rescue was far from the truth. She bluntly clarified she was merely reconstructing his shattered physical vessel. As her glowing hands moved, she nurtured a fragile shard of his corrupted soul to fuel the dark rebirth. Pouting at her icy demeanor, he smugly reminded the witch that their wicked destinies were eternally intertwined. Flashing a twisted grin, he asked if she was furious over his attempt to slaughter Attila. Meeting his gaze, she merely pierced right through his hollow soul. A heavy scoff of absolute disdain escaped her lips. Claiming she felt zero wrath, she stood unfazed as he stubbornly insisted she was hiding her rage. Finally, yielding, she confessed her anger, but revealed an overwhelming sense of twisted gratitude. With burning eyes, she declared that Attila had proven himself worthy to wield the supreme blade, Muel. Even more thrilling, the sorcerer's humiliating defeat had solidified her dark prophecy. Silenced by her revelation, the dark mage stared in absolute bewilderment as she laid bare her grand design. She proclaimed that Attila was destined to conquer the entire world atop a mountain of corpses. Her voice trembled with dark ecstasy as she crowned him the legendary berserker who would manifest their ultimate ambition. Suddenly being slobbered on by a wet tongue, our hero groaned as he dragged himself back to consciousness. Disgusted by the rude awakening, he grumbled about the terrible breath and ordered his furry sidekick to back off. Snapping fully awake, he bolted upright and hollered the hound. Punch's name in pure frustration. Scanning the unfamiliar walls, he questioned whose roof he was currently sleeping under. In a flash of blue light, a holographic system screen materialized with a crucial alert. Locking eyes with the glowing interface, he gasped, realizing the emergency quest had actually been cleared. Flashbacks of the brutal deathmatch hit him, recalling how he blacked out the moment that cursed crow was vanquished. Ping, a fresh notification chimed, announcing the distribution of his hard-earned loot. Scanning the 14200 forwarding the blacked, golden text. He realized he had unlocked the legendary party system and a brand new ability. Evaluating this fresh arsenal, he pondered if the warrior's roar packed a serious punch. A confident smirk crossed his face, certain this new technique would be an absolute game-changer in battle. Pumping his fist, he vowed to obliterate the crow once and for all. But the cold system mercilessly warned him the monster still drew breath. The narrator chimed in, revealing that this vile beast could easily survive a simple decapitation. Smirking knowingly, our protagonist muttered that, as the original creator of this world, he knew that dark secret better than anyone. Bang! A loud commotion at the door instantly snapped him back to reality. Bursting into the room, the mercenary gasped in pure shock, asking if their indestructible leader was truly conscious. He wildly ordered the guard to summon the entire squad this instant. Noticing his subordinates, frantic trembling, the boss calmly demanded an actual report from Otto. Tears pricking his eyes, the rugged fighter confessed his soul-crushing terror over the grim aftermath. Stamping into the room, the rest of the battle-scarred squad urgently checked on their commander. Erupting into joyful cheers, they praised the heavens that their boss had miraculously returned from the dead, though he flatly corrected them that he merely took a nap. Meanwhile, ironclad proof exposing the sinister assassination of Duke Gascony was finally dragged into the light. Cornered by the truth, the treacherous puppet master, Lauron, was thrown in chains for high treason. Stepping into his rightful destiny, Saxon officially claimed the throne as the new ruler of the Gascony domain. Down at the rowdy tavern, the mercenaries drowned themselves in glorious victory, hoisting their mugs bought with their hefty bounty. Clinking tankards with his stoic leader, Otto sighed, deeply relieved that the blood-soaked nightmare was at an end. Nodding in quiet agreement, the boss noted that the fallen duke could finally find eternal peace. Curious, the loyal mercenary probed his commander about his next grand adventure. Just then Saxon strode into the tavern respectfully, seeking an audience with the legendary Lord Attila. Bowing his head, he asked if the hero's battered body was healing. Brushing off the injuries, Attila thanked the noble for the royal hospitality. With a proud smile, Saxon announced he had personally delivered the promised spoils of war. Eyes locking onto the heavy treasure chest, Attila smirked, declaring this was the moment he had been waiting for. Whining about the distribution, a greedy mercenary protested that their overpowered leader shouldn't hog all the epic loot. Sweeping his gaze over his rowdy brothers-in-arms, the boss prepared to deliver a legendary comeback. He bluntly called out their shameless greed with a hearty scoff. Chuckling at the mercenary banter, Saxon threw open the chest, revealing a golden parchment that held the ultimate deed to a vast domain. Jaws hitting the floor, the bewildered squad stammered, questioning what grand lands he was gifting. Smiling warmly, the Duke confirmed he was bestowing this monumental fortune directly into the hands of Sir Otto Frozen. In absolute shock, Otto choked on his own breath, stammering if this kingly reward was truly his. Pointing firmly at the trembling veteran Attila, proudly confirmed that the massive estate was officially his to rule. Trembling with pure ecstasy, Otto cried out, realizing he could finally reclaim his lost nobility. Clutching the sacred document to his chest, he wept, tears of joy, screaming that his days of eating dirt were over forever. The entire tavern erupted, raising their glasses high, and roaring as one. Long live the new lord of the land. Filling their cups once more, the booming voices shook the rafters, chanting, "All hail the invincible Lord Attila." As the wild festivities faded, a peaceful silence washed over the sleepy tavern under the moonlight. By dawn's first light, the lone hero mounted his steed, riding off toward a new destiny. City limits. Hearing his companion grumble, he knew there was no other choice. From this moment on, he would clash against foes wielding ancient magical power. Leaving Otto and the crew behind was his only option. Wearing a grave expression, he steeled himself for the perilous journey. "Let's go," he muttered, riding down the desolate path entirely alone. But after traveling a short distance, a sudden noise shattered the silence. Right on his tail, Otto galloped forward, screaming at him to wait. Stunned, he watched his loyal friend fiercely charge down the dirt path. Sporting a massive grin, Otto burst into laughter as he closed the gap. Waving frantically, Otto roared with absolute conviction that he was joining this quest. Glancing back, the boss helplessly watched Otto's horse charge closer. Annoyed, he demanded to know if the idiot was still drunk from yesterday's feast, vehemently denying it. Otto explained that during his noble days he blindly left everything to his useless subordinates. Pumping his chest proudly, he claimed his territory would survive without him. Losing patience, the protagonist snapped that their contract had officially ended. Otto had zero obligation to follow him into hell. Pausing, Otto confessed that he originally despised him. Thoroughly confused by the sudden admission, he demanded to know what nonsense he was spouting. But Otto smiled, explaining that the boss always threw his life on the line to protect everyone. He had granted real status and territory to mere bandits. Taking a breath, Otto declared his burning desire to explore this vast world together. Hearing this passionate speech, he silently concluded his friend had completely lost his mind. Noticing Otto holding something out, he asked what the hell it was. The tiny mascot on his shoulder tilted its head in utter confusion. Exhausted by the sheer ridiculousness, he breathed a heavy sigh and continued down the perilous road. Seeing his stubborn advance, he finally surrendered, telling Otto to do whatever he pleased. Beaming with absolute joy, Otto cheered that his master plan had worked. He eagerly asked his boss where destiny would take them next. Leaving the borders of Gascony behind, they rode forth with Otto's loud voice echoing through the valley. Thus began his legendary journey, traveling alongside a loyal knight and a mysterious bear. Racing across the golden fields, Otto desperately yelled for a hint about their true destination. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the grand, imposing fortress of the Lord of Aquitaine. Guarding the massive iron doors, sentries flinched as a booming voice demanded they wait a minute. Inside the war room, a furious knight challenged the insane idea of harboring a lethal assassin. In sheer disbelief, he slammed his fists onto the table, declaring it absolutely impossible. Boiling with rage, he roared that the bastard slaughtered his brother, Ruach. Seated calmly, the imposing leader countered that Attila's overwhelming strength was an undeniable truth. He coldly explained that recruiting such a monster would forge an incredibly powerful new alliance. Unyielding, the devastated knight screamed that he would rather die than accept this disgraceful decision. Narrowing his eyes, the supreme leader announced he would crush the man in combat to force his loyalty. Smirking darkly, he revealed that Attila's terrifying power could elevate his absolute authority. Paralyzed by this revelation, the loyal knight simply stared at his ambitious lord in dead silence. Shifting back to the dense forest, night engulfed the woods as their journey pushed forward. Concealed within the pitch-black shadows, a sinister eye locked onto the duo with murderous intent. While resting by the crackling campfire, a monstrous serpent lunged. Otto screamed in sheer terror, but without dropping his food, he casually snatched the colossal beast by its throat. In a single fluid motion, he hurled the demonic creature into the dark abyss. Trembling, Otto desperately begged to find a safer path. Eyes cold as ice, he replied. They were marching to execute a mage, so safety was a myth. Swallowing hard, Otto asked if the legendary Crow Lord still breathed, which he grimly confirmed. Reaching out his calloused hand, he ordered Punch to summon the divine Muiel sword. Beside him, the tiny mascot happily roasted giant snake meat over the blazing flames. But suddenly, the ancient Muiel blade violently pulsed with an overwhelming spiritual pressure. Sensing the lethal bloodlust, he sprang into action, terrifying Otto as the system interface locked onto the Hidden Watcher's dark mana. Erupting with wrath, the holy sword unleashed a blinding laser that made Otto jump. He calmly explained that Muiel memorized that filthy aura and sealed their doomed fate. Pivoting like lightning, he startled Otto again, who nervously asked, "What the heck just went down?" Sighing deeply, he held up his perfectly ruined, charred snake meat. Clenching the ruined dinner, Otto tragically wailed. His precious meal was reduced to ashes. Settling back down, they resumed their peaceful dinner, amidst the eerie silence of the cursed woods. Breathing a sigh of relief, Otto happily devoured a fresh cut of roasted beast. Sitting closely, his stoic boss and the adorable mascot peacefully continued their midnight feast. However, lurking just beyond the tree line, a gargantuan shadow silently observed every move. Bearing razor-sharp fangs, a demonic dire wolf locked its bloodthirsty gaze on its prey. In a flash, an entire vicious pack stormed towards the company no. Flickering campfire, witnessing the sea of glowing eyes, Otto unleashed a blood-curdling scream. The boss frowned, knowing these foul beasts should never have crossed their territory lines. Ding! A glowing system window instantly materialized, issuing an emergency annihilation quest. Through the system interface, he received a chilling vision, exposing the treacherous sorcerer pulling the strings. Realizing this was a deadly ambush, he cursed the twisted mage's dark plot. Trembling beside him, Otto desperately unsheathed his blade, preparing for a brutal bloodbath. Gripping the hilt tight, he braced against the rapidly approaching horde. Seeing his companion paralyzed by fear, he commanded him to awaken his fighting spirit. Barking a fierce warning, he ordered Otto to hold the line and take at least one beast down. A confident predatory smirk formed on his lips, completely ready for the slaughter. Panicking, Otto cried out that there was zero, the only way to face this beast. Demanding he stop whining, the boss assures Otto he will survive. Suddenly, the party system materializes, prompting an official alliance. With a smirk, he orders Otto to fight for his life. Diving straight into the chaos, Otto unleashes a devastating strike upon a savage wolf. The heavy impact leaves him gasping, entirely drained from the sheer intensity of battle. Bracing himself, Otto miraculously blocks the raging beast's deadly fangs with his trembling blade. Immediately, he trades a flurry of desperate clashing strikes with the monster. A sudden realization hits him. He is actually holding his ground, wondering if a hidden power has awakened. Narrowly dodging a lethal swipe, he rolls away from the jaws of death. Gathering his courage, he unleashes a fierce battle cry and launches a desperate counteroffensive. Rushing the beast, his blade finally bites deep, delivering a lethal strike to its heart. The massive wolf is violently blasted backward, crumbling to the earth. Standing victorious, a triumphant, arrogant smirk spreads across his face. After conquering his fear, believing he has shattered his own limits, he boldly turns to assist his boss. But the boss is crushing a demonic wolf beneath his boot like an insect. Instantly, the overpowering leader snatches another beast and uses its massive body as a living weapon. With overwhelming brute strength, he launches the monster straight into the remaining pack. Amidst the blood and chaos, a terrifying maniacal laughter erupts from him. Trembling at the sight, Otto realizes his master is a far greater monster than the beasts themselves. Tearing through the pack, the terrifying boss lands a bone-crushing strike on the gigantic alpha. Having slaughtered the horde, he stands amidst the carnage, his face dangerously cold. He casually notes that they were fortunate to face a mere wolf. Truthfully, the savage beasts roaming this brutal reality are infinitely deadlier than any comic or anime fiction. Moving like a phantom, he rockets toward a new threat lurking in the deep woods. Unleashing a devastating punch, his godlike strength explodes, showing power absolutely beyond mortal limits before the enemy can even breathe. Witnessing this absolute slaughter, the towering alpha wolf unleashes a blood-curdling roar. Readying a lethal strike, his eyes lock onto the beast with murderous intent. Glancing aside, he aggressively summons his loyal comrade Punch to join the bloodbath. Surging forward instantly, Punch delivers a brutal crushing blow to the colossal wolf. Having annihilated the beast, Punch instantly levels up, roaring in absolute triumph. The boss simply observes Otto clashing with another shadowed predator. Suddenly, the glowing system notifications confirm their newly awakened party buffs. Tracking the bloody skirmish, he silently acknowledges his subordinate's rapid evolution. Shifting his stance, he declares, "This pathetic hunt is finally over." A sinister grin stretches across his face as he targets the final remaining prey. Sensing absolute doom, the final desperate wolf scrambles into the dense shadows to flee. Launching into the air, he vows that absolutely nothing escapes his grasp alive. Closing the distance, he raises his heavy axe for a glorious execution. However, without warning, a deadly chain scythe slices through the thick air. The wicked metal tightly binds the very handle of his weapon. His heavy axe is violently disarmed, allowing the trembling beast to vanish. The shocking kinetic impact sends Otto hurtling backward, screaming in pure terror. Gripping the hostile chain, the boss suspects a legendary enemy has finally arrived. Piercing the dark woods with his gaze, he silently calculates the true identity of this hidden stalker. As the steel links vanish into the darkness, he coldly commends the assassin's sharp instincts, Seconds later, the heavy chain aggressively yanks backward. With lightning reflexes, he forcefully coils the steel around his own arm, refusing to surrender the weapon. From the black abyss, an icy voice promises a swift, nameless death in the unforgiving shadows. Securing his iron grip, the boss smirks, declaring he already knows the Phantom's true identity, naming him Saba, the lethal master of the chain. Scythe. Slowly emerging from the suffocating gloom, Saba stands tall, gripping his deadly blades amidst the ancient trees. Stepping out from the balls, underbrush, the deadly assassin locks eyes with a chilling, murderous intent. Tautening the chain, the boss holds his ground perfectly, anticipating the Phantom's inevitable strike. He officially recognizes this man as Saba, a notorious figure among the 7 master assassins. In a flash, Saba launches another, relentless chained attack. The brutal strike collides explosively with the fallen axe. Channeling fierce aura into his fist, the boss shatters the incoming metal with a bare-handed deflection. Lunging furiously, Saba completely abandons the shadows to engage in open, deadly combat. Witnessing this impossible counter, the master assassin is left utterly shaken, unable to comprehend the monster before him. Instantly, the tiny beast on the boss's shoulder unleashes a deafening battle roar. Reclaiming his battle stance, the boss coldly whispers that the real slaughter begins now. He commands Punch to swiftly rescue their struggling comrade Otto. Left entirely alone with the assassin, he decides it is the perfect time to test a newly awakened skill. Tightening his fists, he braces for an earth-shattering clash. Slamming his fist into the dirt, an overwhelming shockwave of pure, devastating energy violently erupts. Swallowed by the roaring aura, he completely focuses his surging power. Tearing the heavens with a beastly scream, he ignites the legendary warrior's roar skill. Instantly, the system brilliantly flashes, confirming a massive surge in party strength and boundless stamina. Deep within the blood-stained forest, that tyrannical shockwave echoes, violently shaking the battlefield. Locked in deadly combat, Otto immediately feels his unstoppable master's presence. Suddenly, Otto is confronted by a terrifying unknown shadow assailant. Moving with superhuman agility, he miraculously evades the lethal strikes and instantly launches a desperate counterattack. Clashing blades, he shockingly realizes the enemy's oppressive pressure has completely vanished. Flooded with this legendary new strength, "Were you hiding your true strength?" she demands. Surging forward, she unleashes a blindingly fast strike. With incredible agility, she ducks beneath his guard, shattering his balance. Leaping onto his back, she locks him down with a fatal grip. Pressing cold steel to his throat, she declares his doom. But suddenly, Punch erupts into the scene, charging at breakneck speed. Sensing danger, she instantly leaps backward, creating absolute distance. Just then, Otto casually strolls up beside Punch, sporting a confident grin, completely ready for battle. From the shadows, she glares at the formidable trio, standing tall within the dense forest. They really are monsters, she realizes, remembering her master's grave warning. Meanwhile, on another explosive battlefield, the warrior clashes with Saba's deadly chain scythe. With bone-crushing force, Saba launches his weapon forward, yet, with absolute mastery, our hero evades the deadly strike, deflecting it effortlessly. Even while dancing through the attacks, his sharp eyes intensely dissect the assassin's footwork. Whipping his wicked chain, Saba unleashes a shockwave, obliterating several shadow clones in an instant. After this devastating burst, the master assassin pauses, gasping for air. The battlefield falls silent as the two warriors lock deadly gazes, anticipating the final clash. Mockingly, he asks if the Grandmaster is trembling for his precious disciple's safety. Completely silent, Saba merely shifts his stance, eyes burning with quiet rage. Our hero reveals he absolutely crushed Caspi, yet chose to spare her pathetic life. Boiling with fury, Saba roars that he sees right through his twisted demonic intentions. Utterly confused, he tilts his head, failing to grasp the old man's raging madness. Saba glares intensely as the warrior advances, revealing a grim truth. If he falls here, the Dark Guild will hunt Caspi next. Closing his eyes, our hero quietly digests this heavy revelation. A confident smirk graces his lips as his mind's eye abruptly awakens. Furious, Saba vows he will never forgive the monster hunting his beloved student. Smiling darkly, the puzzle pieces finally click into perfect place. He confidently declares that frail assassins are mere prey for true warriors. Shadows strike once and vanish into the night, waiting for the perfect opening. Yet Saba has recklessly abandoned the shadows, challenging a titan head-on. This foolish choice proves his blind devotion has completely shattered his reason. A wicked grin spreads as he prepares to ruthlessly exploit this. glaring fatal flaw. Surging into the brutal clash, he fiercely charges his opponent. He chuckles inwardly, truly never expecting the legendary Saba to fight like a wild beast. Deflecting a savage strike, he realizes this blind rage is predictable. Moving like lightning, he seizes Saba's wrist, violently stripping away his weapon. Without hesitation, he launches the old master skyward. He calmly deduces that victory is absolute if he maintains his focus. Crashing into the dirt, Saba desperately scrambles up, bracing for the inevitable counterattack. Flipping backward, the master hurls his chain to buy precious breathing room. But instantly a shadow materializes directly behind the assassin, chilling his spine. Terrified, Saba's mind races. How did he cross space so flawlessly? A devastating strike is unleashed that Saba barely evades by a hair. Riding the overwhelming momentum, our hero relentlessly presses forward, suffocating the distance between them. Sweating profusely, Saba panics over how he's being completely outclassed. With a thunderous kick, the warrior shatters Saba's guard, sending his weapon, flying. Saba is violently blown backward by the devastating shockwave. Suddenly, the warrior's imposing axe mysteriously resonates with the enemy chain. Witnessing this overwhelming display, Saba realizes his every thought has been perfectly predicted. Digging his fingers into the earth, he desperately halts his skid. Beaten into the dirt, Saba resolves to unleash his forbidden ultimate trump card. Eyes burning with determination, he declares this is an absolute fight to the death. Roaring like a demon, he launches a suicidal charge at the warrior. Sensing the crushing aura, our hero merely smirks at the assassin's desperate ultimate technique. Crossing into fatal range, Saba fiercely plunges a devastating strike directly into his chest. With a blood-curdling roar, he chants the name of his absolute annihilation art. Taking the catastrophic hit head-on, the warrior simply smiles, completely unfazed. As the dust settles, a haunting silence swallows the entire forest. Trembling on his feet, Saba disperses the terrifying explosive energy from his fist. Gasping for air, he desperately prays. He finally eradicated the monster. But horror strikes as a familiar voice whispers from right behind him, utterly and completely unharmed. Paralyzed by absolute terror, Saba realizes his ultimate sacrifice was utterly useless. The warrior coldly asks if Saba wishes to throw his life away. Trembling in sheer dread, Saba simply stares in horror, cold sweat drenching his face. Scanning the woods, he readies to abandon the brutal battlefield. Without hesitation, they swiftly vanish into the shadows, fleeing the area. Catching a sound, he wonders if another enemy approaches. Standing tall, he simply scoffs, glaring piercingly into the dense trees. Meanwhile, rewinding fate slightly, Otto is clashing violently against Caspi and Punch, screaming a battle cry. Caspi explodes forward, unleashing a flurry of deadly dagger strikes. Roaring in defiance, Otto flawlessly deflects every single lethal blade. Overwhelmed by his monstrous strength, Caspi desperately questions why fate twisted into this nightmare. Amidst the chaotic clash, a sinister rustling echoes from the dark forest behind her. Sensing the perfect opening, Otto roars that the absolute end has come. Launching into the sky, he crashes down with a world-shattering sword strike. Cursing under her breath, she scrambled to block the deadly ambush. But in a flash, Saba materialized before her, taking the devastating blow meant for her. Bracing himself, Otto narrowly deflected Saba's explosive strike. Witnessing this clash, Caspi froze in utter disbelief. Sprinting toward her fallen master, she screamed his name, her heart pounding with dread for his life. Utterly bewildered, she could only stare in shock. Coughing weakly, Saba gathered his remaining strength to pass on his dying will. He commanded her to follow these strangers for the time being. Cornered by fate, Caspi tearfully accepted her master's final decree. Gazing at his trembling disciple, Saba fell into a heavy silence. Then, he turned his back, dragging his battered body into the distance. Fading into the mist, Saba offered one last, lingering wave. Swallowed by the shadows, his voice echoed to survive at all costs. Watching his retreating figure, she cried out for him, tears streaming down her face. Suddenly, a blazing torch pierced the pitch-black forest. Soon after, a heavily armed night squadron charged into the clearing. Surveying the blood-soaked battlefield, a vanguard swiftly turned toward his commander. Eyes narrowed in deadly focus, the crimson-haired captain verified the grim report. Scattered across the dirt, massive demonic wolves lay utterly slaughtered. Taking in the carnage, a wicked grin spread across the leader's face. He mocked, asking if one man truly annihilated this entire pack. Irritated by the disrespect, he growled back his confirmation. Furious, the captain roared that such a feat was impossible. Smirking coldly, he replied that belief was not his problem. The truth remained the truth. Murderous tension erupted as their glares violently clashed. Just then, an urgent shout echoed through the dark woods, desperately seeking their lord. Bursting through the thickets, Otto and Caspi sprinted toward Attila's position. Spotting Otto with the stranger, he demanded an immediate explanation. Watching from the shadows, the arrogant knight scrutinized their arrival. Burning with indignation, Caspi shrieked her real name in defiance. Leveling his shimmering blade, the knight interrogated them about their loyalties. Stepping up to the crimson-haired commander, he threw the question right back. Attila's gaze dripped with absolute disgust. Enraged by the disrespect, the surrounding troops bellowed for him to kneel. Suddenly, he recognized Arno, the proud heir of Margrave Hinrich Stefan. Radiating confidence, Otto stepped up, declaring himself the Baron of Beltron. The squadron gasped, questioning if this was the legendary war hero, but another mocked his rugged bandit-like appearance. Arno scoffed, demanding to see the royal seal as proof. Drawing his weapon with lethal intent, he prepared for battle. He declared they would hang for impersonating nobles. Suddenly, a scout scrambled toward the hostile standoff, screaming out Lord Arno's name. Panting heavily, the messenger announced a critical frontline update. He leaned in frantically, whispering the dark secret directly into Arno's ear. The commander's arrogant smirk instantly vanished, replaced by pale dread. Gripped by sudden panic, he declared an absolute state of emergency. Pointing his blade at Otto, he challenged the alleged hero to prove his legendary strength. Standing their ground, Otto and Caspi analyzed the shifting tide with grim focus. Clinging to his shoulder, the tiny beast hissed furiously at the armored threat. Thrusting his sword forward, Arno branded him a murderer, officially initiating